they make a big, huge difference. You just press some buttons there. Are you okay now? Or now, are we okay?
We got to start over.
Really? All right. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. Today, October 23rd, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with fellow investigator, researcher, and most importantly, my son, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. So we're just going to go through this really quick so Ted doesn't have to hear this again. I just want to thank everyone tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of our extended family of listeners. Apparently, see, Joe, my buttons were all pushed. Yours weren't. So
we had some issues right before we went live. We were getting chopped up audio from ourselves coming through our Big Mac here, the Mac computer. And so I went ahead and shut everything down on the audio end, and I forgot to unmute us coming back. So there's that silence you guys heard.
Except on BTR, I believe they heard everything, or did they?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway. But I just,
I want to... It's Friday.
Really the most important part of this, really two important parts, is number one, I made the announcement that effective the first show in November 2nd,
yep,
which is Monday, Eric, the tech, will be on with us full time. We're bringing him on full time. He's going to be with us during the show, and we're making some improvements where Skype interviews, video Skype interviews for those people who listen and watch on YouTube. We're also doing we're expanding into different areas. This is really a tremendous leap of faith we're taking, but it's going to have just such a great impact on the final product. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who have helped us grow. And that's from the bottom of our hearts. And you know, we're still growing, and we're still in need of that support. And thank you. Just thank you for those people. Thank you in advance. And thank God for allowing us this opportunity. It's something that we don't ever want to squander. You know, we attempt to bring the truth, unfettered truth, and with quality guests like Ted Broer tonight. I mean, guys and women who are really, who love God, who understand the lateness of the hour, and who really are top quality people inside and out. And of course, Ted Broer is one of them. But Joe, I'm going to kick it over to you. And I know I was scattered there with that introduction, but I'll tell you something. You know, it's you know, sometimes hey, look, we're not polished. We're anything but polished.
And again, something you said at the beginning, and I'll cut over here, the products.
Ted Broer's right.
Products.
Yes, I forgot that didn't make it, did it?
No. We have a small sample of the products on the desk, and yes, we do use them, as you said, for those people who ask, you know, if we.
Yeah, I got an email saying you really don't use those products, and well, there they are. I mean, yeah, as Joe puts one in his pocket. But seriously, folks, Ted Broer, I really believe in my heart of hearts, I believe that he saved my life, or at least changed my life for the better. If you go to healthmasters.com, there is really it's a protocol. It's a Hagmann blood sugar protocol. I'm humbled by it, but I'm also, in a way, a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say ashamed, but you know, it makes you take notice, because you got to take care of, folks. We have to be prepared for anything, and that includes our health. Mm-hmm. And it's something you can't.
I mean, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything else, really. I mean,
that's right.
The quality of life begins with health, and
yep.
It's more than just, you know, taking care of yourself when you're sick. It's like your spiritual health. You have to maintain it. That's right. Know, even when you think you're doing good. So,
and that's my vote. I mean, believe me, here's just a small, 3, 4, 5 products from Ted Broer, but please, folks, you know, take care of yourself. Healthmasters.com. Also, get the book Breakthrough Health. It's just a fantastic book. Sign up for Ted's newsletter, and he's our guest tonight.
And on his blog, healthmasters.com, Dr. Ted Broer. Welcome back to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Doug. Good to be with you guys. And let me read you something I wrote. I've got a friend of mine who's a nationally known evangelist, and he has cancer. And if I mentioned his name, you'd know it. So out of respect for him, I'm not going to do that. But I sent out a link today to my instant message group. My folks that I send when I send my what do you call them, Joe, when you send something on your iPhone through a telephone? What's it called? It's called instant message, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of people that I send stuff to all the time, And I was sending out some stuff about the family issues this week, and then someone sent out a thing about this pastor. And they were asking me, how do we as Christians deal with the fact that these nationally known evangelists, some of whom are in the healing ministry and pray for people to be healed, that they don't get healed? And then several people responded on the show and or on the Skype thing or the instant message thing. And I finally answered it. And here's what I said. And I wrote this morning in a kind of hurry, so if the grammar's not right, forgive me. But here's what it said. I know this pastor. I have been on his show many, many times. This pastor has no support structure at home concerning a healthy lifestyle. Quite frankly, his dietary habits are awful. When he was on my health program years ago, he lost over 40 pounds. It was an excellent health. Here's what I suggest you tell people as to why people don't get healed. Just because a Christian preacher is a good man or a great preacher doesn't mean he obeys natural laws. When natural laws are broken, there are always consequences. The law of gravity being an example. If you step off a 10-story building, it doesn't matter whether you believe in the law of gravity or not. God wants a complete relationship with us, body, soul, and spirit. When this does not occur and natural laws are violated, many times the Christian has to deal with the disease or the consequences. God is not a man that he should be mocked. All of us need to do our best. When our best is not good enough, grace is sufficient for us. But remember, grace is primarily for our salvation, not for us to flaunt an unhealthy lifestyle. A man will reap what he has sown. There are 4 Old Testament precepts: God's relationship to man, man's relationship to man, the sanitary laws, and the dietary laws. When Jesus came, he forever changed the first 2, God's relationship to man and man's relationship to man. We still need to eat right and maintain proper sanitation. The second 2 were never changed. If you do not take care of your body, eat properly, have proper sanitation, you will deal with the consequences. That's where many Christians find themselves today, dealing with the consequences of poor decisions. These consequences are clearly evident when it comes to health issues such as cancer. Now, does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
100%.
I mean, I wanted to start off with that because I've got some personal stuff I've got to talk to you about the family right now. But I wanted to share that with you about this national evangelist. If I told you his name, everybody would know who he is. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respect him and his family right now in this time of distress they're in. But the reality is everybody wants to ignore natural laws. I don't believe in the law of gravity. I'm going to step off a 10-story building. Okay, Jesus himself, when tested by Satan, didn't step off the temple. Didn't do it. There's natural laws in play in this physical universe, this holographic thing that we're in, that you really can't break with the physics and how everything works in this world. Otherwise, you just find yourself in a mess. And see, and that's the point. We do things that we know we're not supposed to do. Paul said it so succinctly when he said, the things that I know to do are the things that I don't do, but yet the things that I know that I'm supposed to do, those are the things that I don't do, or something like that. But you know what I mean. But he's the opposite of what he's supposed to be doing. And see, that's why grace is there for us. Grace is for salvation primarily, but then if we do fall and we slip up a little bit, God has grace for us. Now, let me share something with you. Now, I'm not airing my family's dirty laundry. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to mention any names here. And I'm going to tell you something that happened to me and my family 1.5 weeks ago that I'm not really happy with, but it happened. And so we need to share this with you. But again, it's not to belittle my family or family members. I'm not going to do that. It has to do with teaching everyone who's listening to me at night a lesson as to what not to do. My father-in-law, Sharon's dad, years and years ago, they got my wife in the, it's from a broken family. Her father and her mother got divorced. Her father was remarried. He's a full-bird colonel in the military, or was. He's retired now. He's 82 years old. And when he was in his 40s, he had another son from a second marriage. His name was Todd. And Todd was the apple of his eye. The kid was gifted. I mean, high IQ, brilliant in school, absolutely gifted. And when we'd go over and we'd visit him on an ongoing basis when Todd was born in 1979, so he's like 5 years old. I'd married Sharon, his half-sister, and we'd go visit them over on the coast where they live. And we'd go see them like once every 6 months or whatever and visit her family. And finally, when he was about 8 years old, about a year before Austin was born, my oldest son, I noticed that Todd had gained a lot of weight. He was about 50 pounds overweight at the age of 8. And I told Stan, his father, this is really important for his self-esteem that you get the weight off. And I told his mother. And I said, let me take him home with us to help him. This is what I do for a living. I'm a state licensed nutritionist. I can help him. I can get his weight off. He can work out with us and have fun with us. And Stan's response to me was, you guys go to one of those holy roly churches, okay? We're going to a Baptist church, and we don't want you guys being an influence on our son. And I said, okay, I'm all right with that. I said, whatever. I said, I just thought I'd help you guys. And his mother got really, really angry at me because I offered to help. Well, then Austin was born the following year, and we didn't go back over for several more years. By the time we went back over, Todd was about 13 years old, Joe, Doug. And now he was about, I guess he was about 300 pounds. And, he's 13 years old, about 300 pounds, terribly, terribly obese. And I said to Stan again with Lisa, and this time we had Austin in tow with us, I said, he's starting to hang out with the wrong kids. He's starting to talk the wrong talk. He's starting to listen to the wrong music. He's in a high school over here on the coast, and I said I'd really prefer that he goes to Christian school. Sharon and I can, scrape up some money, and we can help you guys, and we'll send him to private school for you, to a private Christian school. Let us help you to get him in a situation where it's going to be better for him, because with his weight right now, it's going to be very, very hard for him to be accepted by his peer groups. And he's starting to get involved with this goth group at school, and that's just not a good place for him to go. And his response, the colonel's response was, oh, Ted, I don't want to do that. This high school was good enough for me when I was a child. It'll be good enough for Todd. And I said, you guys really don't want to do this. He's hanging out with the wrong kids. I don't want his life to go sideways. And they said, absolutely not. He's an honor student. He's doing great. I said, okay. About 5 years later, I went over to see them again. We're breaking down like every 5 years. And this time I went with Sharon to go over to see her dad. And I got a phone call on the way over. And the mother, not Sharon's mother, but the mother of Todd, had called us on the phone and told me and told Sharon that I was not welcome in their home anymore, Doug. Are you with me? And so I had to drop. It was awful. I had to drop Sharon off in the coastal town, and I drove on down to Hollywood to visit a good friend of mine named Steve that I'd gone to college with that I hadn't seen in years. And I thought, whatever, man, I don't care. I said, I've gotten involved with these people. I've tried to help them the best I possibly know how, and I guess I've meddled too much. And I said, okay, well, whatever. And so he was just at the end of his senior year, starting college, when that happened. So about 5 years later, now we're every 5 years again. He's like 22, 23 years old, and he's graduating from college. He went to the University of Central Florida. Finally, Stan and Lisa called me up, and they said, we want you to come talk to Todd. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I said, but if you want to bring Todd over here, you can. And they said, well, we want you to help him. And I said, you want me to help him now? He's 22 years old. He's a full-grown male. And they said, well, he's having some problems. And I said, okay. So they brought him to the house, and he comes over, and now he's lost about 160 pounds. He weighs about 140. He's about 6'2", and he's as jaundiced as as bad as you get with hepatitis, right? And he basically has a green mohawk that's about 6 inches tall, covered in piercings and covered in tattoos. And I said to him, wow, you got a lot of tats. He goes, would you like to see them? And I said, sure, why not? So he pulls his shirt off, and he's covered from tats from his neck to his navel. I mean, all kinds of obscene things, satanic symbols, the whole bit. And he goes, how do you like them? And I said, I really don't care about the tattoos, Todd. There's not much you can do about it anyhow. You've got them. I said, what I'm concerned about is drug use. And he looked at me and kind of was shocked. And he proceeded to lie about some stuff that happened in school, which were total lies. And I said, well, Todd, this is just how life works. And so they called him back, and they said, do you think you can help him? I said, no, I really can't help him. I said, he's a 21, 22-year-old man. There's nothing I can do. And I said, but, good luck with all this. Because remember all these years I was trying to help. And finally, about 7 years ago, the dad had to go in for surgery, and basically Todd borrowed one of the cars and wrecked it, totaled the car, totaled his father's car, and told his dad that it was the first time he'd ever drunk any alcohol, and he has no idea what happened, and he wrecked the car. Now, we all know that that's not true, and I tried to explain that to the father, but he didn't believe it. Well, then about 3 years after that, the uncle died, the father's brother died, and we went over, and Todd looked relatively presentable. I mean, he was wearing long sleeves, he covered the tats up, had a shirt button so you couldn't see all the tattoos on his chest. But he looked okay. He had really long hair, and he was still bone thin. And then finally, about a year ago, the dad calls me up and says, Ted, I need to borrow some money from you. And I said, why do you need to borrow money from me, Stan? You're on a full military pension. You've got Social Security coming in. You've got another pension from another job you had. You're doing great financially. He goes, well, I've given Todd around $400,000 over the last 20 years to support him. Okay, now, Doug and Joe, you already know where this is going.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I said, why have you done that? Well, he's had a lot of bad luck. And I said, well, no, what he has is a lot of lies that he's told you. And I said, so the reality is that, you got to understand something. Your boy's on drugs, and he's using the drugs. You're enabling him. He's got you in a triangle where you're the enabler, he's the victim, and I've turned into the accuser. Okay? It's the drug triangle that happens so often, and because you're the enabler, you're actually living your life vicariously through him, and the way his life goes determines how your life goes, and you're getting all this joy from talking about how smart he is, et cetera, et cetera. I said, the problem is, Stan, he's lied almost about everything he's ever told you. And Stan goes, well, that's not true. And I said, and on top of that, he's on drugs. That's where all this money's gone. He's probably using heroin, or he's probably on some type of oxy or something. He's on something. He's on opiates, or he's on heroin. He's on something, or he wouldn't have gone through this much cash and he'd be able to hold down a job. And then Stan started screaming at me and said, look, I just want to borrow some money from you to pay my mortgage this month. I've had to take out 2 different mortgages on my house, and now I'm having to do a wraparound mortgage because I can't pay the bills and I can't pay the house payment anymore, and I'm about to lose everything. And this is the guy who had all that cash saved up from the military and all the jobs he had done on the side, and just, bless his heart, was completely broke from this kid. And I said to him, well, I'll be happy to loan you some money, and I'll go to the bank, and I'll see if I can get a loan for you. And I said, but the thing about it is that I need some stuff from Todd. I need to have a blood test, urine test, and I listed this whole group of stuff that I had to have to prove to me he wasn't on drugs. And, of course, as you already know, he refused to do this.
Sure.
Okay? So anyhow, I was able to facilitate Todd moving in with Stan, and so he was off the street. Well, he lived there for the last 6 months. Tuesday, a week and a half ago now, I get a phone call from Stan. And he sounds desperate on the phone, and he's 82 years old, and he says, Ted, I need your help. And I said, what's going on? He goes, well, Todd wrecked my car last week, so I rented him another car, and he went to Orlando to visit his friends. And they found him in an apartment of a friend in the bathroom unresponsive. Oh. And I said, he's probably had a heroin overdose. He's probably going to die. And Stan goes, he's not dead, and he hasn't had heroin overdose. He does not use drugs. He does not use drugs, Ted. I said, okay, fine. So I jumped in the car, I got an address, and I drove to the scene. Halfway there, I called up the Orlando Police Department. And I asked them, I said, I need to know the status on this scene, what's going on. They said, we've already got units dispatched. And I said, is Todd being taken to the hospital? What is the status? And their response was, one of our police officers will call you in a few minutes.
That's never good. That's never good.
No, and I looked at Sharon, and I held her hand, and I looked at her. We're driving down the road, and I said, your brother's dead. And she goes, you don't know that. I said, I know that. And I said, he's overdosed. Yep. And she goes, well, how do you know that? I said, because they would have told me he's en route to the hospital.
That's right.
So we could have met him at the hospital. I said, the coroner's going to call me, or one of the investigators is going to call me in a few minutes, and I want you to know in advance that he's dead, so you don't flip out in the car on me. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, the investigator called me up and said, Todd is dead. Okay? Now, here's the deal and why I've told you this whole story. When Stan called me at 1 o'clock, I told him that Todd had probably overdosed, and he screamed and he yelled at me and told me his son wasn't on drugs, but the son was already dead. Now, here's why I'm saying this to everybody. This happened in my family. Heroin has gotten ridiculous. When I talked to the investigator at the crime scene, he told me, at the death scene, he told me that the Afghan heroin was coming in so pure now because they had a bumper poppy crop that they're not cutting the heroin at all anymore, and that they're basically causing all of these overdoses. Now, he died on a street in an apartment complex that's called Heroin Highway in Orlando. And they told me that they've had almost 20 heroin deaths there within a 200-yard radius in the past year. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is, parents, listen to me, please. And I ask you, I'd get on my hands and my knees, and I would beg you right now, and if we were on Skype, I would do that. If you've got a kid using drugs who's 12, 13, 14 years old, and he's hanging out with the wrong people, and he's doing the wrong things, please, if you can't meet the needs of that child, don't let that child go sideways. Get them professional help. Talk to the pastors. send them to a drug treatment protocol. Whatever you need to do, get it done. Because many cases now, these drugs are being brought in so pure and so powerful, they're even lacing opiates now in marijuana. And marijuana is like 10 times stronger than it was, 40, 50 years ago when you as a parent may have been smoking it. And remember, when these children start smoking pot at a very, very young age, it stops brain development. They literally lock themselves in emotionally at whatever year they are when they start smoking. So if they're 14 or 15 and they start smoking, that's as far as their maturity is probably going to go without the grace of God intervening. So I'm telling you this because it hit my family so hard and my wife so hard that I know this is a horrible story, but I needed to share that this happened to me. Okay, to my family, to my wife's family, to her half-brother. Of course, we've only seen him 3 times now in 20 years. But the point is, it's something that's real, and it's a major problem in the United States with the drug abuse right now. On Wednesday, I do my own show now on the Global Star Radio Network with Todd, from on 3 to 4 every single day, Monday through Friday. And I brought a man on. His name was Michael Barrett. And I was talking to him about drug addictions and drug withdrawals. You guys would love to have him on as your guest. He's phenomenal. Had him on for the full hour, and he heads a huge drug rehab program in Australia through the churches over there, and he's bringing it to this country, the spiritual, physical, and mental drug rehab system. And I started talking to him about opium and heroin usage and the deaths associated with that. He said it's gone off the charts. But then you know what he said, Doug? He said, heroin is bad, but very rarely does someone ever die when they come off of heroin. He goes, it's very, 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 very rare. He said, Hollywood has massively overblown that. He goes, we don't even use methadone for heroin withdrawal. We just get them, make sure they get plenty of fluids, stay hydrated, and we give them B vitamin shots, B as in boy, vitamin shots, B complex vitamin shot. And he goes, it massively reduces the symptoms associated with the withdrawal, and we can get them off of it. Because we don't use methadone because methadone is as addictive as heroin is.
Yep.
He goes, because the biggest drug that we have now that kills people on withdrawal in the United States and in Australia is Xanax. Xanax. He said when you combine Xanax with alcohol and you start to come off of it, he said it stays in your fat-soluble tissue for up to 1 year. It takes a year to come off this something, 6 months to a year to come off of it. It's that addictive. You can actually go into a shock with your adrenal glands, and you can actually die. He says more people die coming off Xanax, the prescription drug, than off the heroin drugs. And so I wanted to share all of this with you guys tonight to let you know that, everybody's got to deal with this mess. Every family's got to deal with this mess. Don't feel as though you're a failure if your children start hanging out with the wrong people or start lying and cheating and stealing and doing things wrong. Get them the help they need. Don't feel as though you have to say, well, I can handle it myself. You may not be able to handle it yourself. You don't want to be the facilitator. You don't want to be the person living vicariously through their child. And Mike said this very simply. He said the facilitator or the person that's allowing this to happen, basically his life and his quality of life is determined by the quality of life of the person using the drugs. So as long as the person who's using the drugs is doing well, everybody does well. Otherwise, he drags them all down into the ditch with him. If you can't help somebody in your family who's got drug issues, get them help. I've got a friend of mine right now. He's a dear, dear friend. He's got a 15-year-old son that's addicted to pot, alcohol, everything. Guy smokes dope all the time. And I begged him and begged him and begged him. Now, after Todd died a week and a half ago, I said, look, here's the deal. I'm not saying this is going to happen to your son, but what I am saying is you need to try to get some type of treatment intervention for your son. And, Doug, I know you could tell me the same stories over and over and over again with what you've seen on the street as a private investigator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Even within my family, I mean, I know it's epidemic. Oh, man. Yeah.
Well, it's just one of those deals. People don't realize how bad it is out there with the kids now. So that's what I always tell parents. I mean, I know a really good place out in Montana. It's a great ranch for kids. They don't want a bunch of violent offenders. They won't take any of them. But if you've got kids that are having some issues and some problems with authority and just not adjusting right, this is the place to go. I mean, it's amazing. And this is what you have to realize is not all of us have all of the tools that are necessary to handle situations that we're not trained to handle. And so sometimes it's just easier for someone else to say something. I know me, when I was being raised, my parents were divorced, and I had a surrogate father. His name was Howard Grant. To this day, I totally respect him because my dad had moved back to Iowa, so I only saw my dad a few months out of the year, and Howard was always there for me. He was a chemist. He'd gone to college. He was a trained professional. And whenever I'd have a problem trying to deal with my mom or trying to deal with social pressures or whatever, I would go talk to Howard. And a lot of times it's just easier to talk to somebody else who's not a family member to try to help people get through all these things. Now, let's fast forward one more notch, and I'll take you to the day-night stories, and we got all kinds of breaking news stories to cover with you guys. 2 days ago, this is Friday now, Wednesday morning, I got a phone call at 7 o'clock in the morning. This is a week after this happened with Todd. Now, 7 o'clock 2 mornings ago, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law, and she needs to be hospitalized. We have to call an ambulance for her because she can't get out of bed. She thinks she's had a mini stroke or has gotten herself paralyzed or had a heart attack. So we're taking her to the hot. We tell the ambulance we want her to go to Celebration Hospital because there's too much MRSA in the Winter Haven Hospital and the Lakeland Hospital. We want to make sure we go to Celebration. It's a newer system, newer hospital. So we get over to. So they said they won't. So the ambulance refuses to take her to the hospital because it's like 4 or 5 miles further on the interstate. Now that's crazy if you believe that. And I told him, I said, well, you don't seem to understand. This really isn't an option. You've got her stabilized. You said there's nothing wrong with her heart now. I said, she's just very, very weak. I said, I really need her to go to Celebration Hospital. And they said, well, we don't want her to go to Celebration Hospital. We want her basically to go to one of the other hospitals. Well, I told them, I said, absolutely not. So eventually they've got to call their supervisor 30 minutes later, whatever. And finally I said, look, we're taking her somewhere in 3 minutes to Celebration. I'm putting her in the car, and I'm taking her myself. I'm not dealing with this nonsense. So we get her in the hospital. I've got to tell them no flu shots, all the other stuff, which they told me that would have been routine. I had not told them that. And so we get her in there. Now she's getting back out of the hospital tonight. Okay, she's only in there for one night. She basically had exhausted herself and basically had adrenal insufficiency. So she's going to be fine. So thank you for your prayers, all those I've contacted about that. But here's the craziest thing. So we're sitting. I walked into the emergency room. I came back out to my car to get it parked, and the guy said, "Well, I'll valet it for you." And I said, "Okay, fine. It's free valet." So I walked back into the front emergency room, and people are in there with all these gloves and surgical masks on in the front of the hospital. I mean, everybody, the attendees, everybody's got surgical masks and gloves on. So I walked in, and I said, what the heck is going on in here? I said, what are you guys trying to protect yourselves from? I said, I tell you what, I have enough. I don't need to know anymore. I'm going back out to my car. So I trot back out to the car, and by this time the guy's moving the car, right? And I stopped him, and I said, whoa, stop. I'm going to sit in the car out here and wait for everybody to get settled in the hospital, and I'll park the car myself. And he goes, okay. So he gets out of the car, hands me the keys back. He'd already driven like 10 or 15 feet. All of a sudden, I'm sitting there with the windows down because it's cool. It's like 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's cool in the morning. I'm texting my friends to pray for my mother-in-law. And all of a sudden, I hear one of the other attendees say, well, yeah, we have an Ebola patient in the hospital. They just came in about 20 minutes ago, full-blown Ebola right out of Africa. Okay? And I'm like, so I hear this is yesterday morning, right? And so I'm like, the windows are down. So I said, pardon me, you said you have an Ebola patient here? Well, yeah, they just came in on that car right there that we've got the cords around. I said, well, can I ask you who moved the car? They said, well, the guy who valeted your car moved the car. I said, you're telling me the guy that was in the car that was full of vomit from the Ebola patient has been in my car after he moved their car, and now my car has been cross-contaminated with Ebola. He goes, well, yeah, I guess so.
Oh, man.
So then they bring me out like a case of alcohol swabs, right? So I'm swabbing me down. I'm swabbing the car down. I'm swabbing the dashboard down, steering wheel, seats, everything, right? And I'm thinking, and finally I tell them, I said, guys, I hate to tell you this. Are you a level 4 quarantine facility? And they said, well, absolutely not. I said, what are you taking an Ebola patient for? And why was he in this guy's car? And why is he moving my car? I said, this is a pretty bad breach of protocol as far as I'm concerned. Why am I having to deal with this now? And the guy goes, man, we're really sorry. And so about 10 minutes later, I'm still sitting there swabbing everything down. He comes back out. He goes, well, it might have been an Ebola drill. Oh. I said, it might have been a drill. Are you guys just covering your butts now? Is this for real or not really? He goes, well, I don't know. It might have been a drill. So I have a friend of mine who lives in Celebration. I had to go by and get some water from them, and because they eat the way we eat. And so I'm in the back hose bib right now, taking my shoes off, scrubbing down in the backyard by the dumpster because they weren't home.
Nice.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is insanity. This is insanity that we have these people coming into Ebola facilities. So finally I go back to the hospital. Now I'm calling up the head hospital on the telephone, chewing them all out. And finally they said, well, we're so sorry, Dr. Brower. He goes, this was a drill. There was no Ebola patient here. And I said, guys, this is kind of need-to-know information. So Doug, Joe, that's been my last week and a half. How do you like that?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it goes from bad to bad
to Ebola.
to Ebola. Yeah,
Bad to Ebola. And so
really.
the reason I told, and again, the reason I told you all of that about my brother-in-law dying is because I want you guys to know something. When a kid's 8 years old, they start getting really, really obese. Now, please, parents, don't yell at me. Now, I know a lot of you will say, "Oh, no, look, listen to this. Listen to me, please." If all they want to do is sit around and play video games and eat junk food and get fat, I'm telling you this right now, it's going to affect their self-esteem. Just like I told Stan this when that kid was 8 years old. By the time he was 13-year-old, he's 300 pounds, and everything I tried to do to try to help fell on deaf ears. Please realize your children's health is your responsibility. You directly affect a child's self-esteem if you let them get extremely obese when they're at a very young age. If they're 10 or 15 pounds overweight, whatever, who cares? They can grow out of all that, but they can't grow out of 300 pounds. So please, feed your kids right, make sure they exercise right, don't live your life vicariously through your children, and make sure if you can't take care of what they need and you can't specifically take care of any issues they're having, get some help. That's what I've done with one of my kids. And so if you don't do that, all you're going to do is be in a situation saying when you get older, I wish I would have, instead of I'm so glad that I did. And that's the point of what I wanted to say tonight. And now I've got a bunch of news stories, including the 40 things in the world that aren't real, so we can cover all that stuff. But I want to go over all that stuff with you guys in detail tonight because I really felt, Joe and Doug, that I needed to share some of this stuff with you guys because people are always saying, well, Ted, you've got this together and you got that together. Hey, wait a minute. We're just a family like everybody else. I still put my pants on one leg at a time like everybody else, and I still do everything that I try to do for my family the best I possibly can. And that's why I wanted to share all of this stuff with you guys tonight because I wanted you to realize there's something going on in the United States, and it's not good. And we're going to talk about that right now. I've got a whole bunch of stories to cover with you guys. But I was talking, and by the way, this Michael Barrett, he said one other thing. He said methamphetamines are so damaging to the brain because they last for so long. He said if you take a hit of cocaine, it'll last for like 20 or 30 minutes. He said the meth will last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours depending on what you get and how much you take. And he said it causes massive brain damage. And so I want to read you this interesting article that I pulled up by Michael Schneider. He said, what would cause a high school kid to take 2 kitchen knives and go on a stabbing rampage through his school? What's going on? What's happening, and why are we having such a moral decay in the United States? What would cause a topless woman to ransack a McDonald's in St. Petersburg, Florida? What would cause 2 18-year-old boys to beat a 30-year-old mentally disabled man to death with a baseball bat just so they could get his Xbox? What would cause a new father to put his 6-week-old daughter in a freezer to keep her from crying? A lot of people regard those kinds of stories as isolated incidences, but as you'll see from the rest of this article, it's simply not isolated. It's happening all over the United States. And, Doug, you know it's true. You know what's happening all over. You know what's happening. See, what's happening is these kids are directly being affected by these immunizations. And we've done entire shows on what an encephalitic scream is, and when these kids go into these violent brain swelling episodes, they start screaming and screaming and screaming, which is probably what happened to his daughter. And so he doesn't know what to do because he's completely, either he's messed out or something because he's all drugged up anyhow, so he's doing these crazy things, putting her in a freezer. And the point is, we need to realize that we've got a major problem in the United States, and that this Sabbatean, synagogue of Satan, New World Order nonsense that's going on is destroying the United States, and it's doing it per every generation. It's getting worse and worse. Right now in the United States, there are 20 million new STD cases every single year. America has the highest STD infection rate in the entire industrial world. Americans in the 15 to 24-year-old age group account for about 50% of all of the new STD cases each year. It costs our nation approximately $16 billion a year to treat our sexually transmitted diseases. And according to one survey, 24% of all U.S. teens that have STDs say they still have unprotected regular sex. And it goes. And now in Chicago, public school kindergarten teachers are required to set aside 30 minutes a month for sex education to 5-year-olds. I mean, it's just gotten so crazy and so decadent in this country, and what we're doing to our children. It's almost hard to believe this is happening to the United States. I mean, it really is to me, Doug. I mean, I don't know what to even say. At this point, 1 of every 14 girls in the United States has at least one sexually transmitted disease. That's 25%. An astounding 30% of all Internet traffic now goes to adult websites. 70% of all men age 18 to 24 age bracket, visit at least an adult site once a month. The average high school boy spends 2 hours, and I think that's way low, on adult websites every week. 89% of all pornography is produced in the United States. The marriage rate in the United States has fallen to an all-time low. Right now it is sitting at a yearly rate of 6.8 marriages per 1,000 people. America has the highest divorce rate in the world by a good margin. For women under the age of 30 in the United States, more than half of all the babies are being born out of wedlock. It's a massacre that's almost unspeakable. More than 56 million American babies have been slaughtered in this country since Roe v. Wade. The number of American babies killed by abortion each year is roughly equivalent to the number of U.S. military deaths that have occurred in all of the wars that the United States has ever been involved with combined. Combined, Doug. Some abortion clinics have been caught selling aborted baby parts. We know all that. Planned Parenthood Margaret Sanger once said the following: the most merciful thing that a family does to an infant member is to kill it. But now she is praised in the halls of Congress. Planned Parenthood performs more than 300,000 abortions a year. The number of sexual assaults in the U.S. military is at an all-time high, and the majority of them are male on male. During 2012, more than 85,000 military veterans were formally treated for sexual abuse that they suffered while serving in the U.S. military. This just goes, according to one study, 22 military veterans kill themselves in the United States every single day. In America today, there are 60 million people that abuse alcohol. There are 22 million that use illegal drugs. And incredibly, more than 11% of all Americans that are 12 years of age or older admit they've driven home under the influence of alcohol at least once during the past year. 12 years or age of older? That's crazy. And 70 million people are taking mind-altering drugs. Prescription painkillers kill more Americans than heroin and cocaine combined, which we just covered that a few minutes ago with the Xanax. America has the highest rate of illegal drug use on the entire planet. According to the federal government, the number of heroin addicts in the United States has more than doubled since 2002. I'll tell you about that in just a second. The number of heroin-related overdose deaths has risen 84% since 2010. And it goes on and on and on. The video games, 88% of those who are religiously unaffiliated are not looking for religion. Nearly one-fifth, 20% of U.S. adults have no religious affiliation whatsoever. 60% of all adults believe that religion has no impact in American life. It just goes on and on. And what's happened here is we've gone in now and we've brought all this Afghan dope in, because you remember what happened at the end of World War II with what happened with the Operation Condor and Operation Gladio. Are you familiar with those two things? I know you guys are.
Yes, we are. But Ted, if you want to speak to that for the people in our audience who might not be, go ahead.
Well, let me share with that. This is just. I'm going to give you a real basic thing. What happened after World War II? A lot of the military personnel in Germany had set up basically sabotage units all over Europe, and they were still fighting communism. And they came to the Americans. Several of the generals in Europe came in. The German generals came to America, to the newly formed CIA, and they said, we're going to do all of this stuff. And they said, well, what we'll do is we'll basically fund you, and we'll work against communism together. And then they one of the things the Flying Tigers were doing, the Air Force, the military in the Far East, one of their only purposes was to bring opium in for Chiang Kai-shek. And Chiang Kai-shek was actually funding his entire army from opium sales to the people there in China and other countries. And so they decided, since they were being primarily funded by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations to start with, as far as this covert military operations, they had to have funding. So they decided to bring heroin into the United States, primarily to the Harlem jazz clubs, and they were going to be bringing it out of the Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand triangle. And that's where they started bringing on these drugs, and they decided that they were going to, that the blacks were already decadent, so they didn't care about getting them addicted. And if you watch The Godfather, Part 1, they talk about this, because it's right after the war, and they start talking about bringing the drugs into the blacks. And if you watch it again, and watch Godfather Part 1, they talk about the different groups of mafiosos in New York City that were going to bring the drugs in. And they actually used one of the Italian mafia guys, his name was Lucky Luciano, to help facilitate this. And Operation Gladio was basically being used for the CIA to bring drugs in to fund these covert operations. And so what ends up happening is they didn't have a place to put all of this extra money. So they established the Vatican Bank, Italy did, as an independent vassal of the Vatican, became an independent state with an independent bank which had no regulatory oversight, and they started funneling all of the money through the Vatican banks. And then this wasn't big enough, so they had to start opening up banks all over the world because they were bringing in so much money. Finally, they got so profitable, they opened up Operation Condor, and they started bringing in and overthrowing many of the governments in South America. And one of the governments they overthrew was Argentina. And what they were doing is the people that were trying to maintain the government and speaking against what they were doing, they were being disappeared. And one of the people that was disappearing them and having them dropped off of airplanes in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and having his own parishioners hauled off and children killed and families killed and women killed and men killed is the current Pope. Now, a lot of people don't even realize that. I mean, this guy's he's neck deep in this whole New World Order. And so then they couldn't figure out how to coordinate everything they were doing. They decided to bring the Masonic lodges in, and they were using the Masonic lodges to help facilitate what they were doing throughout the world as far as getting the orders out to control all this drug flow and all the other things they were doing. Now, I'm not saying all Masonic lodges were involved in this, but what happened is it was against the Catholic bylaws for a person to be a Mason and be in the Catholic Church if they were a priest. They weren't allowed to be in secret societies. And the Masons pretty much infiltrated the Catholic Church in the 50s and the 60s, and then the Operation Gladio, controlled by the Masons and through the Catholic Church, basically took control of this entire operation as far as bringing this money in, and then they started running all this heroin out of Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. Well, these folks in Vietnam, they were being used primarily to funnel this money and this drugs back to the United States, and they didn't want to do it anymore, and they said they were getting out. They didn't want to be involved with it anymore. Well, that caused one of the precipitating factors that caused the Vietnam War. After the Vietnam War, there was a massive drought in Southeast Asia, and the drugs were moved to Afghanistan. You know the whole story, Doug.
Oh, yeah.
And when it was moved to Afghanistan, Russia found out about that. They wanted to close it down. So then we started funding the people against Russia to start keeping the opium crops going in Afghanistan. Finally, the Taliban got control of Afghanistan, threw all the opium out. We had to go back in and overthrow Afghanistan with our military so we could replant the opium. Now, opium is the number one product of Afghanistan and the third largest commodity sold in the world. Oil's number one, natural gas is number two, opium's number three. And it's $1 trillion enterprise coming just into the United States every single year. And I'm not talking about cocaine and all the stuff coming out of South America. I'm talking about poppy being raised in Afghanistan, being brought into the United States, and it's coming through some of our major Air Force bases and being distributed through the mob. This whole thing is a whole covert black thing that nobody wants to talk about, and you know it's true. I know it's true. The people that are in alternative news, they know it's true, but the mainstream media won't touch it because the mainstream media is owned by the same banking families that control all the money that's coming through all of this basically profiteering. Pope John Paul I, he was killed after 28 days in the Vatican because he was going to oppose the Masons in the Vatican and the Vatican Bank. Pope John Paul II, he was basically setting up this money laundering through his different banks in South America. He decided that that they had lost too much money because the interest rates went up too much with Carter, and they ended up shooting him. Okay, and so finally he realized that he had these banks went out of business. That he didn't want to pay the money back, so they shot him to get his attention, and then he gave all the money back to the people that lost all these investors because the Vatican was actually underwriting all of this stuff. This thing gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And Doug and Joe, I hope I did okay on that as far as a brief summary of that because this is very complicated. We have to start giving names out. But that's what's going on. And so now we have heroin coming in that killed my brother-in-law. Pure of heroin. They're not even having to cut it anymore because of the bumper crop in Afghanistan. Our troops, and I've spoken to them who've come back from Afghanistan, they said all we did is walk around poppy fields and we ignored them and we guarded the poppy fields because the Taliban didn't want the poppy fields in Afghanistan. They wanted to destroy them. But our government, which is being run by this covert military CIA operation, they're basically the ones that are funding all of this stuff, and they're funding their own operations through the sale of narcotics worldwide. I mean, this is how bad it really is, Doug.
Oh, sure.
And that's why I wanted to, and I knew about all this stuff, but I didn't want to talk about a lot of this stuff because it's kind of dangerous to talk about it. But I wanted to bring it up because of what happened to Todd, and now he's dead a week and a half ago. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those deals that's just really that bad.
Yeah, it is. Man, if people understood that this government, our government, the criminal cabal, I shouldn't say our government, the criminal cabal within our government is they're running drugs. They are the same ones who are running weapons, the same ones who are really calling the shots. We, in essence, are a captured operation. I say that all the time, and in fact, they put markers in The CIA puts markers in the raw product of the cocaine, in depending on which drug, for example, which drug cartel you belong to, just to make sure it's their cocaine that's getting into the United States and not the opposing cartels. This is how bad it is, and people don't understand that.
And Doug, also remember in the Vietnam War with all those body bags. They were bringing heroin back in those body bags with those dead GIs.
Yeah.
They were underneath the bodies. I mean, that's how they were importing most of it. I mean, this is so sick and so twisted and so nuts that when you start telling people that aren't awake about this, they think that you're sick and twisted and nuts because they can't believe this is real because of normalcy bias. They don't want to believe the government has been hijacked. Our government went through a coup when President Kennedy was things that happened back in the 16 and 1700s. They think, well, that's ancient history. That was 300 or 400 years ago. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. Well, why do I care about what happened 300 years ago? Because this whole plot's been going on all the way through this timeline. And nobody understands that unless you start looking through what they've done and what they believe. They believe you should turn everything upside down that God created because they want to, quote-unquote, bring in the Messiah if there's pure evil on the planet. Now I believe they're completely convinced that Lucifer's the God, and they want to bring him onto the rule and reign. I mean, these people are a bunch of twisted fanatics that are nuts. The problem is they run the banking system, and they own most of the assets in the United States, including controlling position in most of the Fortune 500 corporations. And we're going to give you those, I'll give you those statistics in a few minutes. So the truth is this, that, you know, Jesus said this. He goes, light has come into the world, but the world has preferred the darkness. And that's what's going on right now, Doug. It's shows like yours and Dave Hodges and Sheila Zielinski, and hopefully I can try to do that from 3 to 4 on Global Star and on Sunday night on 7 to 8 on Global Star. And I'm also on with Dave Hodges this Sunday night in 2 days.
Oh, great.
That's what we're trying. Well, we're all together working on this, trying to make this happen. Now, and I want to, by the way, I want to thank your listeners. So many folks, they find out about your blood sugar protocol or Dave Hodges, healthy joint protocol or whatever we have on the websites and how much we've helped Hodges and how much we've helped you. And they call and they order our products and they keep us supported. And that's what I really appreciate your listeners, because so many shows I get on, people call up our office, they'll talk to us for an hour, and they'll say, okay, fine, thank you, we're going to go to GNC now and get products. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Go to GNC, get something that's probably not going to work, that was made in China. Good luck with all that. And I said, but we're just trying to, pay our bills here like everybody else is. So the folks that are there supporting us, I want to say thank you to all of the folks that listen to the show and support us. We appreciate it, because we know you get supplements anywhere. I don't think they're as good as the supplements that we produce, but I want you guys to know this. I appreciate all of you guys and all the support you've given me, for the last 35 years since we've been in business. And I know a lot of my listeners now are people that we've actually sent emails to, Doug, that are listening to your show now, because we've cross-promoted you to our entire mailing list, because that's what we want to do. We want to make everybody realize that we're all part of this team, because if we all stand together in a cohesive unit and we say we don't want revolution, we want restoration of the Constitution, we want these people that are involved out, we want the Federal Reserve Bank out. We want to be rid of these people forever that have come in here and have basically undermined us and undermined our Constitution, and now they're undermining our way of life by dragging all these immigrants into the United States. It's interesting. I'm really proud of my Northern European ancestry. I'm not supposed to be able to say that, Doug. That's considered racist now.
Yeah, you racist bigot.
Because I'm proud my parents were from Germany. My up in northern Germany, close to the Netherlands. I can't say that anymore.
Hold that
well,
thought,
I'm
Ted.
sorry. I'm going to say that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, as you darn well should.
Hold that thought. We're up against the top of the hour break on this Friday, October 23rd, 2015 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with Dr. Ted Breuer here on Global Star Radio Network.
And folks, be sure to tune into his broadcast.
3 to 4 p.m. here on Global Star Radio
Absolutely.
Network, Monday through Friday, and I think he said 7 to 8 Sunday nights.
Sunday, that's right.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 on this Friday, October 22nd edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. October 23rd edition, I'm sorry. We're joined by...
I lost a day there.
We're joined tonight by Dr. Ted Breuer. And a quick some quick announcements. Next week, we have a great lineup. We have Jonathan Wright coming on 8 to 10 Monday. We have Stan Deo on Tuesday. We have Steve Quayle and Ross Powell on Wednesday. Thursday, we're keeping open for news.
We're going to be doing that. Actually, our platform is going to change a little bit. We're going to be keeping probably a day a week, where nothing but our analysis of the news of the week and your phone calls. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and then Friday, John Little will be our guest for the show. So we got a full week next week, and we're looking forward to it.
And I just want to mention as well, folks, please go to HagmannandHagmann.com. Now, this is the only place you can do this. You can't do this by going directly to their website. You have to go to HagmannandHagmann.com, click on the Watchers 9 series, Days of Chaos. You click on that, you can watch the trailer. It costs you nothing. But tell me after you watch the trailer that doesn't resonate with you. This is L.A. Marzulli. They have, especially for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners, Watchers 9 DVD, Days of Chaos, plus 3 months of their e-magazine. It's a $46 plus shipping and handling and tax, almost $50 worth of merchandise. If you go through our website, which you must do, it's all for $35 plus shipping and handling. I'm not sure how long the supplies will last, so please. And they're going quickly. That according to L.A. Marzulli, said, hey, they're going quickly. So HagmannandHagmann.com, click on the Watchers 9 DVD series, and there you will have the special, the Hagmann and Hagmann special. But with that, Joe, we're going to bring back Ted Breuer, our guest. He's a great friend of the program, personal friend of mine. He's a doctor. He is well, I'll tell you what, I am very indebted to Dr. Ted Breuer for what he's done for me physically, personally. And I recommend everyone go to healthmasters.com. That's healthmasters.com. By the way, Ted's got a show on Global Star Radio Network. In case you haven't noticed, Global Star Radio Network is the place to be. Yes, it's the place to be, Global Star Radio Network, and especially with Dr. Ted Breuer, who has a show every weekday, and then, of course, Sundays. But Dr. Ted Breuer, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Doug. By the way, I've got L.I. Marzulli's material. It's phenomenal, and I recommend everybody go to Hagmann and buy that. I consider L.A. to be a friend. I interviewed him multiple times on the Power Hour when I was sitting in as a host for Joyce when she was sick last year, and he's phenomenal. He's got some really, really good material out. And also, everybody keeps contacting us, calling us, emailing us. They want to know if we're going to give another coupon out for the Hagmann show today. Yes, we are. When you go to our website, this has not been broadcast. Okay, so again, it's just for Hagmann listeners. It's put down Doug 5 for the coupon. You get a 5% discount on anything you order from Health Masters. I don't care if it's a distiller or if it's vitamins or whatever. It's 5% off, and that'll be good through Tuesday. And so it's Doug 5. Make sure you put Doug 5, otherwise it won't work. And it's not. And again, it's not something that we're actually sending out on a coupon on our own database. It's just for the Hagmann listeners because we appreciate you guys so much. But let's go ahead and start on the news. I got a bunch of stuff now. If you guys forgive me for covering all of that stuff if you didn't want to hear about my family and what's happened, but I really felt it was necessary to discuss all of that with you guys because I keep getting you guys are contacting me all the time. So tell us more stories. Tell us more stories. We don't know more about you guys and your family. Well, now you know everything about the family. Now you know the bad part about the son of brother-in-law last week who died or a week and a half ago. And so it's just we are real, just like you guys are real, and I'm going to tell you guys the truth, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat anything. Now, here's something interesting. Second Ebola nurse is now crashing into critical condition after the CDC-controlled media falsely proclaimed that she was cured by toxic pharmaceuticals. The 26-year-old nurse says she now suffers from constant nightmares and body aches and insomnia due to the experimental medications that were forced upon her while she was in isolation. Second nurse is also in serious health trouble due to toxic Ebola treatments. A British nurse who has apparently been cured of Ebola earlier this year is now in critical conditions. Doctor has said, with experts expressing astonishment at the deterioration of her condition and how quickly she appears to be dying. And you know what's interesting about this? You know, we did a show. I did probably 50 shows on Ebola a couple of years ago when this thing was blowing through the country. The whole thing, and I'm telling you now up front, this is my opinion, this is what I believe, and I believe this has got a lot of substantiation behind it, and I can prove it by a bunch of research that we've done, and I give it again, is that these are weaponized strains. This is some of our boys at Fort Detrick. These are the ones that in the Kennebec laboratory there in Sierra Leone. This stuff has been weaponized, and they know exactly what they're doing, and that was a giant beta test that they did a couple of years ago to see what would happen to the United States and how much hysteria they could create with this. And I'm telling you guys, a false flag is imminent. I'm going to say that again. A false flag is imminent in the United States because the mainstream media is losing control. The mainstream nonsense that nobody wants to listen to anymore has lost their propaganda efforts. So the efforts of Joseph Goebbels and our mainstream sabotaging controllers, they basically have decided that, we have lost control and the narrative is being taken over now by alternative talk show hosts and guests and people that are out here telling you guys the truth. So don't be surprised if something crazy doesn't happen here, and it's going to be a big one, and it's going to be something that's going to shut down they're going to try to shut down the alternative media, and they're going to try to really infringe on our Second Amendment rights. Here's another article. Federal governments are now attacking dietary supplements to protect Big Pharma, because what they're finding out is, like with your Hagmann blood sugar protocol that stabilizes all the blood sugar problems that so many people have, it normalizes blood pressure, that there are natural ways to do this without taking things like metformin, which cause pancreatic cancer. And so they're learning now that they're starting to lose huge market shares of some of these medications, and they want to come in and start taking over natural supplementation and forcing you to pay 10 or 20 or 30 times more for a bottle of supplements that actually work. And that's why they're doing this. Let me give you some information on this. The HHS says supplements send 23,000 people to the hospital emergency room every year. That's complete lies. The mainstream media is using a study founded by the U.S. Department of Health and the Human Services last week to renew the false charges that supplements are unregulated, unsafe, and require more federal oversight. Let me share something with you. Over 100,000 people die every year from drugs and overdoses and chemical reactions. Close to 800,000 die every year from iatrogenic diseases and hospital mistakes and errors. And now, so they're saying that 23,000 people are sent to the hospital? No. Let me give you the real numbers. Even a cursory examination of the data provided in this study, however, demonstrates once again that the alarmist headlines and the calls for tighter regulations are completely unsupported. First, over 20% of the cases analyzed were a result of unsupervised children swallowing pills. 40% of cases among those 65 or older were caused by choking. Many other causes were heart palpitations. Cases were heart palpitations from ingesting too many diet pills, sexual enhancement pills, and energy drinks. Undoubtedly, some percentage of these so-called dietary supplements were simply illegal substances, but we weren't told what that percentage is. Part of the gross discrepancy in the numbers is likely due to the fact that eye drops, ear drops, and over-the-counter products that are not dietary supplements were apparently included by the researchers. Why they chose to do this, they'll have to explain. And finally, it goes on to say, a drug approval system for supplements would lead to the destruction of the industry, unable to pay the exorbitant costs of the FDA approval process, which can be in hundreds of millions of dollars, because supplements are unpatentable natural supplements. They could never recoup their charges of the investment. Supplement producers would have to shutter their doors, eliminating thousands of products from the market. This removes competition for Big Pharma and allows them to either monopolize the supplement industry or to sell more high-priced prescription drugs. Again, this has already happened with many supplements in Europe. It's almost impossible now to get many supplements in Germany or in Europe or the European Union without prescriptions. I mean, a few years ago, we have a really good product for prostate support to help men not have to get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom all the time. And my cousin in Germany, his name is Fritz Broer, he was having all kinds of problems, and we had some with us when I went to Germany because he had asked me about it. We gave it to him. It completely ameliorated all of his symptoms. He had no more problems with it. He tried for us to send him some over there, Doug, and it was stopped and sent back by the EU authorities and said it wasn't allowed in Germany.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? Wasn't allowed by the EU.
Yep.
And see, so there's all kinds of natural things that you can do. One of the best things you can take is black seed oil, B-L-A-C-K, black seed oil. It does great for folks with adult onset diabetes. And also, some of the articles I read says it's a cure for everything. It's one of the best fungal remedies on the market. I mean, if you've got a problem with yeast infections, it'll pretty much immediately gets rid of it. I mean, it's an amazing, if you've got a problem with your skin itching or your ears itching or whatever, it can get rid of that almost immediately. And you just take a tablespoon of that a day, but you better mix it with something like pomegranate juice, because it's a wicked tasting stuff. I'm telling you that.
Hey Ted, I don't want to get you off your what do you have? And I've been getting a lot of emails about this. What do you have, or what do you recommend? There seems to be this sudden. I've been hearing more and more about this, about either internal or external cysts. Is there something going on here with respect to this?
Well, a lot of that, and Doug, it's funny you asked me that, because I was trying to do an entire show with you, at least an hour. I was going to do an hour on Morgellons.
Right.
And what's going on with Morgellons, which is basically a fungus, and how it's being put into the human genome. And I've got so much research that I've completed on it right now, but it wasn't complete for a show tonight. And so a lot of things that are causing cysts are going to be GMO foods. A lot of them are going to be the different sprays they're putting on us. And a lot of it's going to be the Roundup and the glyphosate. So we can do a whole show on that if you like, because you are absolutely right. There's a major problem that's going on right now, and we're actually being poisoned, and it's causing a lot of these health conditions. That's why it's super important, and we'll cover this in a few moments, because I've got so much news to cover tonight.
Sure, go ahead.
We'll cover this in a few moments about what you can do to really increase your health, but the most important thing I want to do is get this program together on this Morgellons. It's not what you think it is. It's almost like something that's rewriting our DNA. It's the weirdest stuff when you start doing the research on it. And I've got some of the top German scientists, and I've looked at their research, but it's so technical. I mean, these guys are like, you can't understand half of what they say. Luckily, I speak a little bit of German, and they're talking about this stuff. And so I'm having to go through and decipher what they're trying to do and how they're trying to explain how this stuff is doing this to your body. But it all goes back into physics. I'm not even going to try to mess it up. It goes back into that whole thing with this fourth dimensional stuff. It's crazy what happens from a physical standpoint with what's called biological transmutation, and the way that the DNA talks to each other. It's interfering with all of that, and so it's really strange what's going on with that. So I'll cover that next month.
All right.
The flu shot remains the most dangerous vaccine based on injuries and deaths compensated by the government. Another article. The Department of Justice issues a report on vaccine industries and deaths every quarter to the Advisory Commission on Childhood Vaccines. There are 211 cases of vaccine injuries and deaths for the period of 5/16 to 8/15. And 65 of the 86 settlements were from injuries due to the flu shot, and the majority of flu shot injuries were for Guillain-Barré. Now, this is why yesterday when my mother-in-law went into the hospital for checkup, I told them, I said, absolutely no flu shots. Folks, I don't know how to say this to you. 3 flu shots in a row increase the risk of senile dementia by up to 50%. If you're over the age of 60, like I'll be 60 here in a few weeks. If you're over the age of 60, you don't need to be taking this stuff because you're already losing enough brain cells as you get older anyhow. You're already starting to lose cognition. This stuff is so loaded with aluminum, it's so loaded with adjuvants, it's so loaded with thimerosal. The multi-vial flu shots still contain mercury, which is one of the most poisonous substances on the planet. So just say no to the flu shot. They don't work. The CDC comes out every year and says, we're sorry, we gave you the wrong flu shots. They're not going to work again. But yet they're telling pregnant mothers to get them now, injecting that mercury into these babies that are still in them. I mean, before it was sacrosanct, Doug. When you had a person who was pregnant, you never, under any circumstances, gave them drugs after the thialamide disaster back in the 50s. And all those kids were born with missing arms and legs and hands and everything else. And so now it's like, okay, let's experiment with these parents and these women who are pregnant, and let's see what these shots do to these children. And I get it. It's all part of the Margaret Sanger eugenics protocol that's being implemented to us by these Luciferian groups that are doing all this stuff. That want eugenics on the population and want to destroy our abilities to reproduce and to dumb us all down. And so you say, well, it can't be that bad. It's that bad. You know, I mean, I've done shows with you guys before, Doug, talking about why they sacrifice humans, why they drink blood. It's still in the archives. I don't want to go over all that stuff because it's so negative. But why this stuff is being done and what they're accomplishing by it. And next month we're going to talk about more about some of that stuff too and what's going on with transdimensional physics. Here's another one. Sesame Street rolls out an autistic Muppet. This is, yeah, you may not even know about this. To
No.
normalize vaccine-injured children, and basically is following Elmo push for the mass vaccinations. Sesame Street has rolled out its first autistic Muppet named Julia, says the Sesame Street website. They're trying to make vaccines children who have been damaged as happy, amazing children rather than admitting the truth that vaccines cause autism in many children. The fact that vaccines were linked to autism was openly admitted by the top CDC scientist, Dr. William Thompson, who admitted to taking part in a scientific fraud scheme involving numerous CDC officials. And I've covered all of that in detail on your show and what they've done. And so the crazy thing about all of this is that they know it's all a lie, but they don't care. They don't care. And now Monsanto is asking California to pull the plan to list Monsanto herbicide as a cancer-causing agent. When I read you last month how Monsanto's own classified research that was obtained through the Freedom of Information Act lists like a dozen different cancers that were caused by glyphosate or Roundup, and that Monsanto knew about this as far as 40 years back, and they covered up the research as being confidential and trade secrets. It was finally released. And now they're saying, quote, a plan by California environmental officials to list a commonly used herbicide as cancer-causing should be withdrawn, Monsanto Corporation told state regulators on Tuesday, saying that California actions could be considered illegal because they are not considering valid scientific evidence. I mean, Doug, we have been completely taken over by these corporations. And they give you a drug. They make $100 billion from the drug. They've got to pay out $8 billion in settlements for all the tens of thousands of people that were injured or committed suicide by this drug. And they end up with a $92 billion net profit before taxes. And so they don't even consider the people that died and all the things they did as even being a factor. They don't care anymore, and nobody goes to jail. It's the nuttiest thing I've ever seen.
You know, Ted, I saw, I had the news on this morning's news, and there was a commercial. I think it was for a drug called Xarelto, and there was some celebrities or sports stars on this commercial, and they were playing golf or something, and they were, talking it up on the commercial, obviously. Well, as soon as that commercial was over, it was one of those ads that says, attention, have you been harmed by taking the drug Xarelto? Well, call this number, to join the lawsuit. It just was amazing to me.
It's bizarre. In fact, it's so funny. I've gotten so many letters. I was going to print them up, but I forgot, from your listeners this month. And so many of them said, I listened to you on the Doug Show since back in January when you helped Doug with his blood sugar. It was at 450. Now it's back down to normal. And I just wasn't sure if this protocol would work for me. And now I've started on your program, and my blood sugar was at 350. Now it's back down to 100. I feel great. I've got tremendous energy. And all kinds of letters like this have been coming in from y'all's listeners, and I really appreciate it when you guys write me letters like that and tell me that we've been successful in helping you as far as stabilizing your blood sugar. I'm not claiming any cure for anything, but what I will say this, if you eat the right kind of foods and you take the right kind of supplements, you can really have healthy blood sugar. That's all I'm saying. And so people need to understand that. Same thing Dave Hodges, he was having all these problems with his joints and his knees. And I said, well, Dave, we can fix that. So we sent him the Hodges joint protocol, and all of a sudden his knees are better. He's testified it to the show. He'll talk about it again on Sunday night.
But Ted, if I can just say this to the listeners too, and this is something I truly believe in. And folks, I'm not getting any money to say this, okay? You can go out to GNC or one of the larger chains of nutritional stores. I guess GNC is probably the biggest one. Or you can go to Walmart or Walgreens or whatever, and you can buy like a multivitamin or buy the B complex, and you go ahead and take that. Okay, fine. You get Health Masters their supplements, Dr. Ted Broer supplements. I guarantee you, if you cannot tell the difference, I'll give you your money back. Okay, I'm serious, man. That's one thing that I was able to, look, I've always been like a really high-strung kind of guy, okay? Well, I guess you have to be in terms of, when you work EMS and stuff like that. But the bottom line is this. I was never able to, really feel energized from taking B complex. I took your B complex, and it took probably, once or, I don't know, maybe one or two doses, but then immediately, I felt, wow, man. I felt like I took some, I got just a rush of energy. And every time, I'm going to tell you. So I said all that to say this. This is not an infomercial. And you know what? Even if it was, but it should be. Because people, ladies and gentlemen, you get what you pay for. And I'll say this. Your supplements, by far, outweigh are better than anything I've ever seen and taken.
Well, thank you, Doug.
And
and that's why we offer a money back guarantee. I mean, and I'm not. I don't like me. I didn't even talk about our supplements all last hour, and I'm not going to do this like a lot of talk show hosts do. This starts running on supplements. We just guarantee people if they don't feel better on the product, send it back. That's all we do because the reason for that is they never send them back because they feel so good because it's just that good of a product. But let's go ahead and let's go back to some more stuff here. This is and people need to realize that the corrupt criminal regime that is currently occupying Washington D.C., these Sabbatarians that are running everything. That they're running scared right now because the wild popularity of Donald Trump going out and telling the truth has shocked them. But see, what they're going to do, and this is what is going to happen all the time, and it always happens with these alternative candidates who don't really, walk on the mainstream, is because of the Diebold election machines and the election fraud that's been so evident since, the last 15 years. Since we got rid of paper ballots, is this. They're going to pretty much put in whoever they want to put in. And here's a scenario that could happen. Hillary Clinton gets a Democratic nomination, which is probably going to happen, right? I think that's pretty much a shoo-in. I can't believe that's going to happen, but that's probably going to happen. And then what's going to happen is they're going to say, well, Hillary is catching Donald Trump if Donald Trump gets the nomination. And they'll show the polls that Hillary is at 49%, Donald's at 51%. They're neck and neck with a 3% margin of error. There's no telling who's going to run the election. And they're going to blow that scenario into the mainstream media so much that everybody goes, oh, wow, it's going to be a really close election. And in essence, it may be 90% of the people are trying to vote for Donald Trump and 10% for Hillary. But what they did when George Bush outlawed exit polling in national elections, he did it for a reason. Because he knew that if you exit polled people when they were coming out on who they voted for, it wouldn't match up with the precinct's vote count. And that's why he did that, because of the Diebold elections. I mean, George Bush was not, and I know these people, God almighty, forgive me for using words like that. Wicked, wicked, wicked. I mean, George Bush is a Republican. If you think there's one difference between the Democrats or the Republicans, it's not. It's the Sabbatarian, Frankists, the synagogue of Satan of guys that are running this thing. And I think, I'm going to start yelling in a minute. I don't want to do that. Okay. Here's the thing. Let's talk about lemon juice. One of the things we tell you with the blood sugar protocol is to use at least 1 ounce of lemon juice 3 or 4 times a day. And here's why. When you use 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemons, it has to be fresh. It can't be reconstituted. It helps to strengthen your liver. It helps to lower your blood sugar and stabilize it. It helps to increase your digestion. It helps to get rid of urinary tract infections. It helps to strengthen the immune system and helps to balance your pH. pH is absolutely critical. I was trained in that in my naturopathic training back in the early 80s. And pH is everything. If you don't have the right pH in your body can't even utilize the vitamins or the supplements that you take. That's why not everybody should be using apple cider vinegar. Some people's body chemistry is a little bit too acidic, and apple cider vinegar will drive it more acidic and make you sicker.
That's right.
That's why people say, well, everybody should be using that. Well, not everybody should be using that because most people are overly acidic. If you've got an alkaline body chemistry, apple cider vinegar is one of the best things you can take, but you got to be careful because it actually dissolves enamel on your teeth. Here's another article: 7 things considered healthy but are not. Mammograms. I love this one. Mammograms increase the risks of breast cancer from the radiation. I've been telling people this for 20 years. Number 2, early detection mammogram saves lives. That has shown that is completely not true. Not only are mammograms unhealthy for the reason given in the first example, but also early detection is a myth in that it doesn't save lives at the early detection stage, and it's very difficult to tell whether or not the diagnosis indicates that breast cancer is malignant or benign. Because the treatment is big business, the cancer is often incorrectly diagnosed, giving it the benefit of the doubt, labeling it as malignant for favoring the profits rather than labeling it as benign. Over 50% of the mammograms saying that you have cancer are false. They're false positives, Doug. And now they're showing statistically that you don't increase your life expectancy at all because so many people are dying from the treatment protocols that they were given from a false positive. Number 3, fluoride is good for your teeth. We've talked about that until ad nauseum. No, don't use fluoride. It's poison. Pasteurized, homogenized growth hormone milk. don't use it. It's unbelievably toxic. Soy. If you want to grow boobs and you're a guy, get soy. If you want to feminize your boy, give him soy. No soy. Don't do soy. Soy's bad. If you want to have endocrine problems and fibroid cysts, which we talked a little earlier about, Doug, and cysts in your body, for women, soy does that. Stay away from coffee. It also, I get these articles all the time telling me how healthy coffee is. I use the Purple Sticks, the green tea extract. Coffee elevates cortisol. Purple Sticks green tea doesn't do that. Coffee causes all kinds of heart problems, health problems, blood pressure problems, cortisol problems, fat loss, fat gain problems. It's not healthy, period. Green tea does a lot of the same benefits that coffee does as far as increasing cognition, but doesn't have all the bad side effects. So I used to be addicted to coffee when I was in graduate school at Florida State. I don't do it anymore. And, of course, the next one on this list is alcohol. Stay away from alcohol. It increases the risks of pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism, and osteoporosis. And if you are taking Xanax, don't mix it with alcohol. That makes it even much more addictive. Another article I'm reading here, major causes of colon rectal cancer. Here's what we have. The article talked a little bit about this. I disagree with most of the articles. I changed it. The number one thing that's going to cause most of your colon rectal problems are sodium nitrites in your luncheon meat. Sodium nitrite reacts with stomach acid to form nitrosamines, which are one of the most potent gastrointestinal cancer-inducing agents known to man, period. So sodium nitrite. If it says sodium nitrite, that's the acid test. Don't eat it. Slow fecal transit time. What that means is when you eat something, it takes 3 or 4 days to use the bathroom and get it back out. That's not healthy. That causes way too much poison to be developed in your colon, way too many toxicity issues. You've got to increase the fiber and increase the water. We use a great product called Atrialo. It helps increase, helps to get the stuff pushed through your system. It's a great product. Alcohol consumption also increases the risks of colon rectal cancer. And using charcoal, if you do it in moderation, every once in a while, it's okay when you're cooking a steak, but it's best to cook it over an open flame. It's really difficult when you charcoal cook using steak because it increases a compound called benzopyrene. And when you eat one charcoal broiled steak, it's like smoking 20 cigarettes, Doug. And it's cancer-causing ability.
I heard that.
So, I've never heard that.
No, I have, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you don't want to do that. Charcoal's not the way to cook. Use natural gas. Just pan fry it. That's what I do. I throw some butter in the pan, and you say, well, you eat steak? I eat steak all the time. I love steak. I don't eat pork, but I eat beef. And, we try to get organic beef and just pan fry it. Just put it in the pan, get the pan hot, put some butter in it, flip it 3 or 4 times, and have at it, man. It's actually healthy for you. Well, now everybody's gonna get mad. Now I'm gonna get letters, Doug. You said to eat beef. We don't want to eat beef. Well, you've been lied to. Beef is good for you. So there. Gosh.
That's right.
Tell the top 10 health conspiracies. This is a good one by Phillips. He goes, the war on cancer is a lie. That's an absolute truth. They know the cure for cancer. Cancer is not that big of a deal in most cases to get rid of, but people don't want to know the truth because the drug companies aren't going to tell them the truth because the drug companies are owned by the same people that own the media. Linus Pauling and his unified theory of heart disease. This is good. Vitamin C, it showed Linus Pauling could get rid of almost all heart disease problems because of what it did to vessel integrity, but nobody ever hears about that or talks about it. GMO foods are bad for you. It goes back into vaccinations, which we've killed at depth on this show. Fluoride again. The Ebola, man-made HIV, AIDS epidemic from the boys at Fort Detrick, and how bad these things are for you. The cover-ups of nutrition and vitamin supplements for sources of curing disease. See, here's the thing. If I tell you guys that you can spend $100 and get rid of your high blood pressure, or $100 and get rid of your high blood sugar, or $100 and get rid of your high cholesterol, and you go, well, that doesn't cost much. Yeah, but the insurance doesn't cover that. And so a lot of people don't want to spend $100 because the insurance is going to have to pay for everything they get. But the reality is, if I tell you that you're taking a statin drug because you have high cholesterol, and that's going to lead to all kinds of heart problems, all kinds of brain problems, all kinds of liver problems, and all kinds of kidney problems, including kidney transplant and failure, then maybe that'll get your attention. Last month, oh gosh, let me tell you the story again. I've got a friend of mine I've known for 40 years. I mean, no, actually longer than that, 42 years. I mean, I've known this guy forever, and he's a good friend. And, I don't see him very often because he never got saved and I did. And what happened is, about 5 years ago, he came to me, and he was on crutches, and he couldn't walk. And he said to me, Ted, I need some help. And I was like, okay, well, I don't somebody ever sees you when you need help. I said, what's wrong? And he told me something about his knees. I said, okay, try this just now. So I gave him the joint support formula and the stuff that we have that we use the Dave Hodges on. And then finally, about 3 weeks later, he calls me back. And he goes, dude, what'd you give me? And I said, well, I just gave you our joint support formula. And he goes, I'm not on crutches anymore. I cannot believe this. I'm completely out of pain. And I said, okay, come great. He said, well, I want to come over and talk to you about some other stuff. I said, all right. So he came over, and he tells me he's drinking like 88 ounces of diet sodas a day, like two of those 44 big gulp sodas every day because he's a mechanic.
He'd be considered a felon in New York City. Go ahead.
And I told him, I said, yeah, this is 5 years ago. I said, look, John, don't do this. I said, this stuff causes brain tumors, brain cancer, seizures, headaches, optic nerve degradation, blindness. Don't do this. He goes, well, my sister died of brain cancer. And I said, well, I'm telling you, don't do this, okay? And so he said, okay. So he said, I'll try to stop. Well, he never stopped. So I don't see him for a couple more years. Last week, 2 weeks ago, he came over, actually 3 weeks ago now, before Todd died, and he said to me, he goes, I got to talk to you again. I said, all right, come on over. And so he came over, and he goes, first of all, I got to tell you a good story. He goes, about 3 months ago, I had a guy come in who was a mechanic that I knew. He was like in his early 80s, and he came into my shop on crutches, and he was slated for both knees to be replaced. And he goes, and so I told the guy, I said, I don't know if this will help, but, I talked to Dr. Brower here at Health Masters, and he told me to order these products, and I did, and I basically have no problems with my knees anymore. And the guy goes, really? So John said the guy went home and he ordered these products online, right? He ordered the Dave Hodges joint protocol. And what happened, he goes, about a month later, he was have to wait for almost a year to have his knee surgery. About a month later, he comes jogging back into the mechanic shop, into the garage, and no crutches. And it was raining, so he kind of trots in. And John goes, dude, what's going on with you? He goes, dude, I got to tell you something. He goes, I know I'm 80 years old, but, here's the thing. I don't have any more knee pain. My knees feel great. Isn't that amazing, Doug?
Yeah.
And, so he's telling me all this. And I said, well, that's great. So he's telling me the story. So finally I looked at him and I said, okay, well, why are you here? I said, the only time you ever come over here is when you need me for something. He goes, well, I need you to yell at me some more. I said, I don't yell at you. If I did, forgive me. I'm not trying to yell at you. He goes, well, no, man. He goes, I'm going blind in my left eye.
Ooh.
And he goes, I don't know what to do. He goes, I've lost my vision. I don't have binocular vision anymore. He says, I'm only seeing out of one eye. I can't work anymore. I can't even see the doggone nuts or the wrenches or anything else to take off these cars, take them apart. I can't work. Right. And he goes, I don't know what to do. And I looked at him and I said, I told you 5 years ago that diet sodas cause optic nerve degradation. Are you still drinking that crap? And he goes, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. And I said, dude, they cause blindness. I've seen it over and over and over again in my practice. And I said, you've got to get off this stuff before you go totally blind in that eye, maybe in the other eye. So I pull up all these emails, just look it up online, Google it. Diet sodas cause optic nerve degradation, or diet sodas cause blindness. That's because they contain a compound called methyl alcohol, which is known as wood alcohol, which is also known as paint thinner. And you can't ingest it. It's a neurological toxin, an optic nerve toxin that degrades the optic nerve. So I told him, I said, you probably have optic nerve degradation. So he left, and he didn't believe me. So he went to 4 different specialists, and finally they did all these tests on him. Finally, the guy comes back to him and says, John, you got optic nerve degradation. You're going blind. We don't know why. So he comes back over to me and he goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, John, I don't know what to tell you. I said, dude, I've tried. I pleaded with you to go to church with me. I pleaded with you to get saved. I pleaded with you not to drink diet sodas. I said, I already showed you how easy it was to correct the knees. And I said, I don't know why you don't listen. And he goes, well, man, I don't know what to do. He goes, you think there's any hope for me? And I said, well, I do if I pray. I said, I believe God will heal you. And he goes, well, can you pray for me? I said, yeah, I'll pray for you. And so I prayed for him, and now he's off the diet sodas, and I'll keep you guys posted on how that goes for him. But the thing is this. Listen to me, friends. If you're drinking diet sodas, they cause massive problems with serotonin in the brain. They cause massive problems with depression. They cause massive problems with optic nerve degradation. They cause all these different conditions. They cause brain tumors, brain cancer, seizures, headaches, optic nerve degradation. The list goes on and on and on. Don't drink aspartame. It's unbelievably poisonous. It contains phenylalanine, aspartic acid, and paint thinner. And you can't drink paint thinner. It's just, you don't do that. Remember, our boy Rumsfeld brought that junk to us.
That's right.
I personally think he deserves a place in Hades for that one, among other reasons. Okay.
Yeah.
Millions are wrongly treated for cancer, the National Cancer Institute panel confirms. 1.3 million cases in the past 30 years alone have been treated for breast cancer because of mammograms that did not have cancer. That's crazy. We just covered that a minute ago. Here's another one. A nurse reuses the exact same syringe while giving flu shots to patients in New Jersey. 67 people were injected with the exact same needle from this lady who was giving flu shots in New Jersey. Now, I don't even know how in the world a nurse who went through training did this. Now, all these people are being brought back in for hepatitis and AIDS testing and everything else because they're afraid they've infected all of these people with whatever one of them may have had. Is that crazy, Doug?
Yeah.
So, again, another reason to stay away from the pharmaceutical people. Just the flu shot because you don't know if you could get some nutbag nurse. Here's another really good article from Michael Schneider. He goes that goodbye middle-class America. 51% of all American workers are now making less than $30,000 a year.
Yep.
According to brand new numbers that were just released by the Social Security Administration, 51% of all workers in the United States make less than $30,000 a year. Let that number sink in for a moment. You can't support a middle-class family in America today on $2,500 a month, especially after taxes are taken out, and yet more than half of all workers in this country make less than that each month. In order to have a thriving middle class, you have got to have an economy that produces lots of middle-class jobs, and that is simply no longer happening in America today. He goes on to say, 38% of all American workers make less than $20,000 a year, 51% less than 30, 62% less than 40, 71% less than 50,000. That's only 29% of the population makes $50,000 or more. The first number is staggering, that 38% make less than 20. The federal poverty level for a family of 5 is $28,000 a year, and yet almost 40% of all American workers do not bring in $20,000 a year. That means that 40% of the American workers are living in poverty right now. That sounds like Greece to me, Doug. It's that bad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, if you have no debts and have $10 in your pocket, you have more wealth than 25% of all Americans.
That's scary.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And you know what, Ted? This is the decimation of, well, not decimation, the destruction, complete destruction of the middle class in order to, I mean, the globalists have to destroy the middle class in order to take over this country from within to create that dual class, the haves versus the have-nots. And that's what's taking place, man. It's by design.
As a nation, we are flat broke, and most of us are living paycheck to paycheck. It has been estimated that it takes approximately $50,000 a year to support a middle-class family for a lifestyle of 4 in the United States. So the fact that 71% of all people make less than that shows how difficult it is to survive. With a huge assistance from the Republican leadership in Congress, Barack Obama recently completed negotiations with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, also known as Obama Trade. This insidious new treaty is going to cover nations that collectively account for 40% of total GDP. Just like NAFTA, this treaty will result in the loss of thousands and thousands of business and millions of good-paying jobs in the United States. The robo-apocalypse in which robots are coming in for workers may be inevitable. In this vision of the future, super smart machines will better humans in pretty much every task. A few of us will own the machines. The few will work for a little while the rest will live off government-provided incomes. And, and that's what's happening. We're going to this transhumanism with these robots and this whole thing that's happening to us, Doug. And I find it almost mind-boggling that we've allowed NAFTA, and I've said it before on your show, I'm going to say it again. Ross Perot called it out, almost 30 years ago now, 25 years ago, when he said that if you sign NAFTA, you're going to get this giant sucking sound of all of these jobs heading south of the border, and he was absolutely right. And the Trans-Pacific, and remember, the corporations are running the planet now, and all of these covert operations are being run through the CIA with the black ops. What is it? 50% of the whole budget now is black ops. Isn't that about right? Isn't that right, Doug? 50%.
It is. Well, they're not going to tell you the truth, but yeah, it's roughly that. Yep.
And I mean, so we don't even know where the money's going. And yet Congress isn't being told. Most of the Congress people, they're not on these committees for these black ops budgets. They don't even know where the money's going. And they're just told to vote for this stuff. I mean, that's why President Kennedy said that he abhorred the secret government and what was going on, and that he needed to get rid of it because he said there was basically this giant institution that operated in covert means, though they were running everything.
Yep.
He's absolutely right. Here's a good article by Michael Savage, and he goes, "We've lost the battle," which I don't believe that. As long as we have breath in our bodies, we can have it. But he said what he said was this. He said Savage said that what German Chancellor Angela Merkel is doing to Germany, what that weakling is doing, what the weakling is doing to England, and what the socialist is doing to France, and what Obama, the psychopath, is doing to America, will render this country non-existent in less than 50 years. He goes, we haven't lost the war. The war has just begun, Savage said, because 30 million to 40 million Americans have finally awakened to what the sociopath, psychopath has done in the White House and what he's done to this country. And they want to stop him from doing more before it's too late. Savage criticized President Obama, Prime Minister David Cameron, Merkel, and other Western leaders with a provocative comparison he recognized could be misunderstood. I love what he said here. He goes, they are doing, he said, what Adolf Hitler did in reverse. Instead of invading other countries, they are letting foreign invaders invade their countries. Hitler was a psychopath, Savage said, who invaded other countries to impose his nation's, let us say, his distorted values and race on other countries. That is what Obama is doing, Savage said. He's invading his own country with people of other races and other cultures and other languages to wipe away the predominant language, the predominant culture of his own nation. He was equally as mad as Hitler. Savage said Merkel is invading Germany with foreigners. Regarding the war for Western civilization, was built largely on the English common law and Christian morality and the uniquely American principles of individualism and self-reliance. Savage also referenced the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, which, of course, is Stalininsky nonsense from the 60s, and, and Timothy O'Leary. So 50 years later, he asked, can anyone say that has worked out well? And the answer is absolutely no, because it destroyed the culture, the very fabric of this country. And I'm going to say this again. I am proud of my Northern European ancestry. So if your grandparents or great-grandparents came from Germany or Ireland or England or Scotland or France or Sweden or Norway or Finland or even parts of Hungary or Copenhagen, all of those different places. I mean, people don't realize this. The largest demographic ethnic group in the United States was German. Most people don't understand that. If you look in the yellow page or the white pages of the phone book, which doesn't exist anymore, but all the Smiths were all Schmidts. All the Millers almost always were almost Muellers. All the Browns were almost always Browns. And so what happened is we have this huge influx of Germans coming into the United States post-Civil War, which brought with them the Protestant work ethic. Most of them were Lutherans. They settled all over the United States. And I was taught by my grandfather, who taught my father this. My grandfather came over like in 1880. My father was born here in 1901. I'm going to repeat that. My father was born here in 1901. If my dad was alive today, he'd be 114 years old. And we were taught, you got to work. I mean, it was just the Protestant work ethic, because the Bible says if you don't work, you don't eat. And it was so funny. I remember Fox, the former prime minister, the president of Mexico, said years ago, they said, why in the world you share the border with the United States? Why is America so blessed and Mexico has some of almost all the same resources, and Mexico's in turmoil and in constant chaos and civil war? He said, when Americans came to America, they came for religious freedom. When the Spanish came to conquer Mexico, they came for gold. And he says, and that's the biggest difference between our countries. And see, and that's the thing. It's the Protestant work ethic. And we were taught this in graduate school at Florida State University, which I'm sure they don't teach anymore, that it was the Protestant work ethic that built and developed the United States of America, Doug. And the craziest thing about this is that we are not even supposed to be proud of our heritage anymore. I mean, white people are what? 6% of the global population now, and we're supposed to be wiped out? And this is what this is going to do. This giant influx of the Muslims into Europe, the giant influx of the Muslims and the Hispanics. And don't get me wrong, I love Hispanics, the hardworking Hispanics who come to the United States and who love God and who are Christians or they're Catholics or they love Jesus. They're coming into this country. I have no problem with that if they do it legally. But when you bring other cultures in, like Muslims into the United States or into Germany, and they're being unbridled, when they're massive immigration waves, they destroy the very culture of Europe. And the last time I was in England, in London, I couldn't find anybody pretty much downtown London who spoke English. Okay, they were almost all Muslim. And in some of the major cities in Germany now, almost everybody is Muslim. So, Doug, what do you think? How are we going to turn that tide back?
Well, first of all, we have to admit there's a problem, okay, which, Ted, so much of what we're seeing today, and I believe this, is brainwashing, and it stems from the Tavistock Institute. And it's interesting, you've got You've got a think tank and a do tank, I guess, in London, they are changing the mindset of the Americans who are attempting to do that, and saying Western European immigration bad, Muslim immigration good, and this is a programming issue, a mental programming issue. And I see so many people, and you know, Ted, I gotta tell you, man, I just want to smack them upside the head sometimes. And I'm a Christian, so I have to repent for that. But you know, I just want to smack some people upside the head when they come out and say, well, you know, too much white European immigration is not good for diversity. Well, what do you want? These people don't want diversity; they want to usurp our Constitution. Ow, 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 ow. Ow, holy cow.
Don't know what that was. Ted, are you still there?
I can't hear.
All right. We're still up on YouTube here. We're still up on Global Star.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Man,
right.
I'll tell you what.
Sounds like we lost Ted, though.
I'm not sure. I think I lost my hearing.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was just a brief interruption there. That was I'm sure everybody went out over here when you hear the when you call somebody instead of the busy signal, you get that other.
Did people hear that? I mean, because it certainly rattled my teeth. I'm not sure if anyone heard that. Oh my goodness. Yowza. I think. Oh,
it's a good thing we weren't on video.
I know that. Oh man, my ears are bleeding. I think after that.
Hey, Dad, you want to go back over to the Comrex box?
Okay.
Because Todd typed something in there. And...
Yeah, he's calling him back.
Okay.
But you know, it's just interesting to me about the immigration.
Maybe his phone died.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But the immigration is a big issue.
Oh yeah,
I mean, Ted hit it right on the head.
And the thing about the immigration issue is we've only seen the half of it because they're estimating, you know, another 100,000 or more immigrants coming to the United States in the next year or so, and it is an epidemic not only in America, it's happening in Western Europe.
All right, we got Ted back.
Okay.
Yeah, that was odd. We started talking about stuff we're not supposed to talk about, and my phone goes click.
Well, I'll tell you what, our ears just got wow. You know that when you have the phone off the hook for too long, and it gives you that horn. Oh my goodness. So.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole thing is that if we don't stand for this, if we don't realize, I mean, we're not allowed to say anything anymore. I mean, like you said, we're allowed to bring every Muslim on the planet from Syria or wherever they want to come in from, every radical, you know, jihadist that we want to bring to the United States is good, and we'll have to pay to have them housed and put here. But if you're trying to bring Northern Europeans to try to escape all that mess in Germany or in the Netherlands or you know, in Copenhagen or wherever, what ends up happening is they're not allowed to come over here anymore. I mean, they got a 90-day visa and that's it. So the whole thing is just kind of nuts. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? You mentioned Kennedy earlier in the program, and a lot of people miss that because of our whatever it was. But Kennedy, with the Johnson 1965 Immigration Act and that Congress that passed that changed the entire dynamic of our. I mean, that really was to balkanize this country, and I'm not talking about with Western Europeans. I'm talking about with Hispanics and Africans. You know, from the continent of Africa and such. People need to understand history, Ted. I mean, really, you've got to understand history to understand that right now what's taking place in this country is to, what would you call it, Ted? I mean, what would you call it?
Well, you know, the whole thing is just media obfuscation, and the whole thing is the destruction of the white culture. And I mean, call it what it is, Doug. I mean, you know, that sounds terribly racist, and I'm not a racist at all. But that's what it is. It's the destruction of the Northern European culture. Call it that if you want to call it that. For some reason, these people just decided that that's not going to exist any longer. They're going to get rid of it. And the last bastion of that was in Northern Europe and in the United States, and it's gone now. And I'm not saying that the white people are any better than anybody else. It's not true. I don't believe that at all. I'm not a geneticist, and I don't believe any of that stuff. And I believe we're all equal in God's eyes. But I believe that all of our cultures were different. They were done over the eons of time, and that we have different cultural variants. I mean, that's why Muslims are so different than Judeo-Christians or even Jews or Christians or anybody. I mean, all these different cultures have something very unique that they can add into the total, realm of humanity, and they're trying to get rid of all that. They're trying to just make an amalgam. They're trying to I remember when I was in school, they called it a mestizo. They're trying to make everybody one race, one culture, to get rid of any type of national identity, because people can't say I'm an American or I'm a German or I'm a Russian or I'm a Swede or I'm a Finland. I'm not. You can't say any of that anymore. They want us to be just a global population of just with no national identity, because they don't want us standing up. But then you look at places like Israel, and they're super strict on their immigration and who they allow to come in. And see, the craziest thing about all of this stuff is that all these crazy two-sided deals that are going on, and it's just that we have just been treated like the Northern European ancestry has just been treated like a bunch of lowlife. Like we're not supposed to be around anymore, and we're going to be assimilated. Like the board are going to come in and just assimilate us. But let's go ahead and talk about some other stuff, because I'm going to get enough bad letters from that anyhow. The government conveniently deleted an entire database of evidence documenting pedophile rings. Of course they did. This is out of England. The independent inquiry into sex abuse for children apologized this week after vital testimony from victims of child sexual abuse was instantly and permanently deleted from their servers. The agency said that the loss of data was due to a technical malfunction which dumped an untold number of testimonials and sworn written testimonies that were submitted to their official website. The agency now claims there was no security breach. Of course there wasn't. They did it internally. And while the testimonials were lost, the privacy of the victims is not at risk. This is an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse that was established by the British Home Secretary Theresa May in 2014. The inquiry was intended to investigate why pedophile rings seem to be exempt from capture. The commission is being run by New Zealand Judge Lowell Goddard, who's being paid over $500,000 a year for her work with the group. Now, here's what's interesting about this. You have talked about this. I have talked about this into nauseam about the sexual child pedophile rings that are so permeating Western culture today. And sadly, this is all part of their satanic ritual worship sacrifice nonsense, which we'll talk about on the next show. And the crazy thing about this is that it's not getting any better; it's getting worse. And this is part of the Sabbatean synagogue of Satan nonsense. These Frankists that are doing all of this stuff. Anyhow, let's go on to another topic. Goldman Sachs, rich man's bank, is now backstopped by you and me.
Yep.
This is from an article by Pam Martins. She said, just when you thought Wall Street's heist of the U.S. financial system couldn't get any crazier, along comes a regulator's report on FDIC-insured banks' exposure to derivatives. According to the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, one of the regulators of national banks as of June the 30th of this year, Goldman Sachs USA, had $78 billion in deposits that were insured by the federal government and by the taxpayers. But they also had $45 trillion in notional derivatives. Notional means face amount of derivatives, according to the OCC report.
Right.
Goldman Sachs Bank's U.S. notional derivatives are an eye-popping 563% of its risk-based capital. You and every other little guy in America is backstopping this bank because it's amazingly FDIC insured. Did that blow your mind or what?
Yes, it
and that's
does.
what happened when they got. That's what happened when they got rid of when they did that. They got rid of that Banking Reform Act back in the '90s with Clinton.
Yep.
And they got rid of. What's it called, Doug? You know what it's called?
Glass-Steagall.
Yes, they got rid of Glass-Steagall, and and now they can just do what they want to do. Now they just gamble with your stuff with these derivatives. Now here's something I want to read to you guys. This is it's a really long article. I'm going to read you one little brief excerpt.
Ted, you want to hold that article till after the break? We got a break coming up in 30 seconds.
The article's called "Who Really Controls the World." I'm going to tell you in just a second.
Oh man, I can't wait, and that's a great cliffhanger. Who really controls the world? We know that Luciferians, but Ted is going to give us a little bit more specificity with respect to that. The Luciferian elite controlling the world.
You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, October 23rd, 2015. Our guest is Dr. Ted Broer. His website is healthmasters.com. That's healthmasters.com. Go there, check out the content. He has a radio show here on Global Star Radio Network Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and
It's
on
a
Sunday,
must listen to, man.
7 to 8. His book, Breakthrough Health. I would urge everybody to get that. It's fantastic. We'll be right back after these short messages here on Global Star Radio Network. Stay with us. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour of this week. Today's Friday, October 23rd, 2015. Our guest tonight is Dr. Ted Breuer, and we've had 2 fantastic hours, information jam-packed so far. His website, healthmasters.com. Go there, check out the video content, the other... He has such a great... I mean, it's more than health information on his website. You can get a lot more information.
The newsletter.
Yeah, the newsletter.
Man, that's great.
I think he has a blog on the website. Plus, he does the radio show.
What do you mean you think?
I'm pretty sure
he does.
His radio show here on Global Star Network is Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and on Sundays, 7 to 8 Eastern.
Absolutely.
And what do you got something there before?
Yeah, I just want to mention that, just want to give a shout out, of course, to our family, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Folks, we need to get prepared, please. Let's get prepared. Let's take preparation seriously. It's biblical. Anyone who tells me that preparing physically is not biblical, I just don't understand that. Preparation is, you have to be responsible. American Survival Wholesale, veteran-owned, Christian-owned company, they do so much for so many. They'll never tell you, let me just say that flat out, they'll never tell you their ministry, their outreach is so huge. And I've had the opportunity to meet the owners of American Survival Wholesale. They're tremendous people, and they're growing. I mean, that company is growing like a weed. But if you really want the really the best of the best in terms of long-term storable food, American Survival Wholesale is the place to go. Now, you can go on the internet and you'll see these specials on the different survival forums. Oh, we're having a special here. Let me tell you something. You get what you pay for. Just like healthmasters.com. People say, well, geez, I can get vitamin B B12 or B complex, at Walmart for $10.99 or for $5.99 for 10,000 pills. Look, I get that. But seriously, you don't want to mess around with your health. And that said, you don't want to mess around when the stuff hits the fan. You don't want to be looking for, or you don't want to be eating cardboard or something that tastes like cardboard. And you want at least the comfort of food that a good food provides, good tasting food provides, and that's American Survival Wholesale. Plus, they've got an array of different survival products there, and they're part of our listening family. They're part of our family. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Want to mention that. Want to mention also Watchers 9 series. You have to go to HagmanandHagmann.com. Click on the link to the Watchers 9 series. It'll take you directly to a page that you cannot get elsewhere. And very special on Watchers 9 series DVDs, Days of Chaos. That's a great deal, and I have seen the end product. Okay, have it in our hands, and let me say that it's phenomenal. So, it's Watchers 9 series, and lastly, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, Paul McGuire's and Joe. You can speak to this, a prayer meeting. Okay, please mark your calendars for November 19th. That's right. Please. And anyone, and I really want to urge anyone in the vicinity of Los Angeles, in fact, it's on paulmcguire.us. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's make this one. Let's fill the house. In fact, let's make it. What I want to hear on November 20th is Paul McGuire calling me up and saying, you know what? We had to go outside because there were so many people. I guarantee you will be touched by Paul McGuire. The prayer meeting, America for a revival, and everyone will be touched. I promise you. I promise you, please mark that down, November 19th. It's never been more important than it is today. With that, Ted left before the break. Ted was going to tell us who really rules the world. And you think okay, and I believe that. I believe that most people, especially our listening audience, we know. But you know what? There's always more to learn, or there's always reinforcement. Ted, welcome back.
Again, when you go to Health Masters for the next 4 days, we're going to have Doug5 is the coupon code, and it's a 5% discount on anything. So there you go. It doesn't matter what you buy. How much you buy is 5%. No minimums, no maximums, whatever you want to do. And so we always do that for the Hagmann listeners, or try to every month if possible, to just facilitate you guys being blessed. And I know that sounds strange, but I really believe that. I mean, I'm like Paul McGuire. I love Paul McGuire, Marzulli, you guys, Hodges, Sheila, Quayle. I mean, we have a group of people now that are in alternative news, and the alternative news is not being dominated by one network anymore, which is, well, that's probably not true. We're probably going to be dominating it with Global Star. Okay, but I can't even speak that because everybody who's pretty much anybody who's telling you the truth and don't have agendas are coming over to Global Star. So I love it. Okay, let's read this real quick. Who really controls the world? Okay, here we go. I'm going to read you this. This is going to blow your mind. These numbers. The four horsemen of the banking apocalypse. Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo own the four horsemen of oil: ExxonMobil, Royal, Dutch Shell, Amoco, Texon, Amoco and Chevron, and Texaco, in tandem with other European and old money behemoths. But their monopoly over the global economy does not end at the edge of the oil patch, according to the 10 filings to the SEC. The four horsemen of banking are among the 10 top stockholders, and I've told you this repeatedly, of virtually every Fortune 500 corporation. Repeat that. 10 top stockholders of virtually every Fortune 500 corporation through their interlocking corporate directorships and stock options and everything they control. It is well known that in 2009, the top 100 largest entities of the world, 44 were corporations. The wealth of these families, which are among the top 10% shareholders in each of these, is far in excess of national economies. In fact, global GDP is around $70 trillion. The Rothschild family wealth alone is estimated to be in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. So was the case with the Rockefellers, who were helped and provided money all along by the Rothschild banking interests. The U.S. has an annual GDP in the range of $14 to $15 trillion. This pales in significance before the wealth of these trillionaires. With the U.S. government and most European countries in debt to the elite through their debt-based currency and fiat money system, there should be absolutely no doubt as to who owns the world and who controls it. To quote Eustace Mullins from his book, The New World Order, the elites rule the U.S. through their foundations, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Federal Reserve System. With no serious challenges to their power, expensive political campaigns are routinely conducted with carefully screened candidates who are pledged to the program of the New World Order. Should they deviate from the program, they would have an accident, be framed on a sex charge, or indicted in some financial irregularity. So there you have it.
Wow.
Same thing we've been telling you guys for years and years and years. It doesn't change. The fiat money system, the Babylonian money system, which Paul McGuire does such a good job explaining, it goes all the way back to the Nimrod, through the Talmud, all of this stuff. It's just really, really, really bad. And there's another good article by Schneider. He says, America is starting to look a lot like Nazi Germany before World War II. And I've been saying that for years. You guys have been saying that for years. And it is what it is. But we're running out of time because I got to cover the top 40 lies that we've been told about fake news. Here's another really good article that Chuck Baldwin wrote. Love Chuck Baldwin. Him and Rodney Howard Brown are like two of the best preachers that I know as far as telling the truth. And he says, for 7 consecutive presidential administrations since Bush Sr. invaded Kuwait, 2016 will make 28 years, the American people have been told that they are at war with terrorists. Republican and Democratic administrations and Congresses alike have built America's entire foreign policy around this hypothesis. Millions have been killed on the war on terror, and tens of thousands of American soldiers have been injured. The entire National Press Corps, including Fox News at the front of the pack, constantly promotes the drumbeat of war by regurgitating government-sponsored talking points and intelligence, never bothering to investigate or question the veracity of the government's assertion. Joseph Goebbels could only have dreamed of such an efficient propaganda ministry. Joining the national news media, this is again Chuck Baldwin saying this, joining the national news media are millions of evangelical Christians such as Hagee, Pat Robertson, Hal Lindsey, et cetera, who use the doctrine of Christian Zionism to also pound the drumbeat of war.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, plus Christians around the world, especially in the Middle East, Northern Africa, Eastern Europe, are basically hypnotized by Christian Zionists such as John Hagee. Here's an example of the numerous pieces of communication. He goes, the Christians receiving these regions around the world. And here's one of the men who wrote back, and Chuck doesn't give the name of the guy who wrote this. He goes, I grew up in an evangelical pastor's home in Nigeria, reading the fallacies of Mr. Schofield's Bible, teaching false doctrines of dispensations. By the grace of God, I now know better. The current state of Israel is a nation based on the accursed Talmudic doctrines of the Pharisees. This Middle Eastern Christian goes on to say, Vladimir Putin is a man of God who knows these people and their hate for our Lord Jesus and for Christians. God forbid those Obama and Netanyahu rented bearded barbarians called moderate rebels, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, enter the city of Damascus, because our Christian brothers and sisters would be annihilated, raped, and forcibly converted to Islam. Now, I'm going to share something with you very quickly about this. What people don't realize is that in 1909 we had the Scofield Bible, which was basically subsidized by how should I say this, a group of attorneys out of New York who were probably Sabbatean Satanists, but that's speculation on my part. And what Scofield did, a lot of what he wrote was from John Nelson Darby, who started teaching the rapture teaching in 1830. Before that time, a lot of the rapture teaching wasn't even taught, and a lot of people say that a lot of Scofield's writings were actually paraphrased or changed that Nelson Darby had written. And then that was his little sidebar. Now Chuck Baldwin goes on to say, he goes, have the American Christians not noticed that ISIS doesn't attack Israel? Gee, I wonder why. If ISIS is the mortal enemy of Israel, why don't we hear about the terrorists attacking Israel? The crazed American neoconservatives that Craig Roberts refers to would be impotent without the massive support they receive from evangelical Christians throughout the United States. Pray tell that what these Christians in America say to their brothers and sisters in Christ from Iraq and Syria and Palestine when they stand by the side of judgment with God. It is the massive support for the war in the Middle East by evangelical Christians in the United States that is forcing our brothers and sisters in Christ there into exile, causing increased persecution and torture among them, and killing thousands and thousands of them, not to mention the torture and martyrdom of our Christian friends in the home of America's greatest ally, Saudi Arabia. This is a future scene I shudder to think about. Now, I read this to you. This is Chuck Baldwin. I mean, he has apparently completely awakened, okay? And he is saying the same things that we have been saying over and over again. And I'm going to say this. I love Israel. I love the Bible's Israel of the Old Testament. That is not what we have over there today. Tel Aviv is the number one homosexual destination in the world today. It is not what you think it is as far as the Old Testament. And we've been taught this dispensationalism and all of these different things that came through the Scofield Bible. And that's what he's saying, Chuck Baldwin is saying in this. And it's not documented in Scripture. The Scofield Bible was a commentary Bible. It was his opinions, not the Word of God. So please, if you're going to read commentary Bibles, they have their useful functions and places. Don't base your doctrine and your beliefs and your theology on these types of Bibles. Base it on the Word of the living God.
And that's
very,
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 true.
very important.
Yeah.
It's true. And now, I pray for Israel, and I pray for the peace of Israel. But I can't get past what they're doing and how the Christian folks are supporting no matter what Israel does because of that Scofield Bible. They've been indoctrinated to believing it is okay. And it's not okay. Genocide is not okay. Killing of innocent people is not okay. None of this is okay. And so we need to stand and, I believe, pray for Israel. But they've got probably close to 100 nuclear weapons. I think they're documenting 60, but it's probably more than that. They don't need our help. They're pretty much a communist nation, and they're run by the Sabbatean groups that basically rule the world, and Israel's basically the fiefdom of the Rothschild Empire through the Balfour Declaration. Now, if you don't want to believe any of that and you get all mad at me, you might as well get mad at me tonight about all of this stuff because I'm just telling you the truth. It's not what you think it is. Pray for Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I do that all the time. But the reality is we've got to call it what it is. It is not the Old Testament that they're dealing with over there anymore. It's the Babylonian Talmud that was written in the 6th century A.D. And if you haven't read that book, you need to read it. It's not what you think it is at all, in case you guys are wondering about that.
I've read that.
All right, let's go to another part. Do you guys agree with any of that?
Well, I've read that, the Talmud, and to speak on the study Bibles, because I see these a lot more now. What you said is so important, that we cannot take other people's commentaries on the Bible as any type of scripture. We have to take the scripture and let scripture verify and back up the scripture, and through prayer and the Holy Spirit understand what it means. We can't use other people's commentaries to base our own beliefs of what the scripture means. They're useful, like you said, but we cannot take those opinions and make them doctrine.
Well, that's right. And the Scofield Bible, I'm going to say one other thing, too, because I go to a Southern Baptist church, and I love Southern Baptists, but they rely really heavily on the Scofield Bible in a lot of their schools, and they believe a lot of this doctrine, especially with dispensationalism and all these other different things that are going on. You guys can look that up in Wikipedia if you want to learn what that means. But the reality is this, and I'm not saying that you don't know what it means, because probably most of the people already know what it means who listen to your show anyhow. But the whole thing is this. The Masonic lodges have huge memberships in the Southern Baptist churches. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that. I'm going to stop, because I don't want to go into meddling with all of this. And I'm telling you guys, if you're involved in the Masonic lodges and you don't realize who they worship and what they're really doing, you need to start doing some research on that, because it's not what you think it is. Now, here's another article, because I'm trying to push through some of these articles because I want to talk about everything in the world is fake, because I've got a bunch of notes on that. Germany says to Benjamin Netanyahu, no, we are responsible for the Holocaust, not the Palestinians, because Bibi had said Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews, by the way, which is true. And Amin al-Hussein went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should we do with them, he asked, and he said, burn them. This is the Muslim guy. Yeah. So here's the thing. Germany is coming in and saying, hey, we're the ones who are responsible for all of this. Now, remember, this was 70 years ago. 70 years ago. This is a long time ago. And Germany has been put on the guilt trip for all of this. Why don't we talk about what the northern troops did to the southern troops that were put into the concentration camps in the Civil War and what happened? Why are we still not laying blame on what happened to these southern troops in these northern concentration camps? Why don't we talk about Sherman's March to the Sea? You know, this whole thing of blaming Germany and the citizens that are there now for something that their grandfathers did is nonsense. We can't continue to do this. Now, I'm not saying we should forget what happened with World War II, the tyranny that was Hitler, but you better look at this. You better look at the research on this. Hitler was put into power through the Rockefellers and the Carnegie Foundation and the Ford Foundations. This is all part of this whole banking elite. And then what happened is he turned on his handlers, and then pretty soon they ended up giving him this favorable, I guess, trip to Argentina if he bailed out of World War II and didn't use his nuclear weapons. Read the book The Fourth Reich by Jim Marrs. Yes. And get an idea of what really happened over there. You've been lied to so much by the mainstream nauseating media about what happened with Germany and Hitler and how they want to whitewash the involvement of Prescott Bush, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, all of these people. And all of this was involved. The motors that were in those vehicles that were running on those German Jeeps and everything else, they were Ford motors. You could look under the hood and see them. And people don't understand. And I'm not saying all of them were Ford motors, because some of them were probably Mercedes or whatever. But the point is this. We were deeply involved in all of this. There's a really good video you can watch online, and it's called 9/11 to JFK. I've promoted that for almost a year on your show now. It's got millions of views now.
Right.
It's called JFK to 9/11. It's a rich man's trick, and it talks about how we've been lied to and who really ran World War II. Because quite frankly, with the advanced weaponry that Hitler had, and Jim Marrs says the same thing, Germany did not have to lose World War II. And a lot of people feel that with Operation Paperclip and a lot of things that happened with Operation Gladio and stuff, that the Nazis did not lose it, that they were able to come in here and infiltrate our government. And a lot of that's also true, and you need to do the research on that.
Hitler survived. Oh, the History Channel just had an expose on this, Ted. Just real quick, they found tunnels, but they're putting out the narrative that Hitler survived and went to South America via Spain, and it's getting pretty well documented. And the fact that the FBI knew this, it's actually validating the FBI file. So thank you for saying that.
He did. Yeah. And he did. We know that. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, it's just and the Russians have done DNA testing now on the body. They said it was Hitler's that was found in the ditch outside of the bunker, and it's the females, and there's no males. I mean, it wasn't Hitler. There wasn't any DNA corroborating the evidence. I mean, it wasn't a male. And so we know it wasn't Hitler's body they found, so we know that. And it was all again through. Well, now this, we don't have time. I'm going to run out of time. Here's another article. After 6 years of austerity, 36% of the Greeks are living in poverty. Another good article. September sees record gun sales. The Federal Bureau of Investigation processed a record number of background checks in the month of September, indicating that gun sales were at an all-time high for that month. That's amazing. That represents a new record of 335,000 more checks than the previous September set in 2012, 23% increase. And remember, when people do background checks, it doesn't necessarily mean they bought one gun. Another good article says the occult roots of the post-gender movement. And you know, this whole thing with Hollywood and these androgynous fashions and all of these things that are going on now, you need to realize this is all of Lucifer, the magic, occult, secret society, mystery religions, who did all of this stuff and who have pushed all of this stuff, who have turned God's word upside down, have been promoting all of this stuff. Look at Miley Cyrus. She's now come out and says that she's pansexual, which I guess she's meaning she has sex with anything, including animals. I don't know. I don't really know what she even means by that. And see, that's where this is going back to, bestiality and everything else. And see, what they're trying to do, again, is to turn God's creation upside down. And it's just crazy. And listen to me, friends. Don't let your children, especially your little girls, watch these filthy, 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 filthy people dance and sing. Don't let them get their CDs. Don't let them get their iTunes downloads. Don't let them do any of this. Monitor what your children listen to. Monitor what they read. That's what happened to Todd at the beginning of the show. I talked about that. When I went over there at 13, I listened to some of his music. And when I was listening to his music, it was all the super heavy acid rap and acid music from the drug culture. And I told his father at that point, you've got to do something. We've got to get him out of this culture. You know, and so I've seen so many kids, they start listening to that music, and it starts getting into their spirit, and it destroys them. So monitor what your children read, monitor what they listen to. And there's another article. Toys R Us are now forcing their college grads who are working for them to train their H-1B foreign replacements. Toys R Us is the latest in a string of U.S. companies that has been caught forcing their American employees to train foreign college graduates to take their American jobs via a process known as knowledge transfer. Isn't that special? So, I mean,
what does that even mean? Well, I'm not even sure what that even means, Ted. Knowledge transfer.
That means that they get what you've got, and you get to go away and go on an unemployment line.
There you go. Okay, that clears it up.
38% of college grads say that college was not worth the cost. And by the way, another study that I read here a while back said that 80% of college graduates don't use their college degree for what they intended to use them for, which I think is neat. I'm glad you're $100,000 in debt with that mess. Yeah. The 12th holistic doctor has now been found dead. Another alleged suicide. This is just not going to end. As long as people are standing out and going against what's going on, it's just going to get worse and worse. And so we just have to realize that we can't continue to allow this stuff to go on. We've got to tell people the truth about natural treatment protocols, and that's what we try to do, because we have to realize that if we don't tell the truth and get it out quickly, then everybody who's in the holistic field, that they're in danger. I mean, they really are. I hate to say that, but it's true, because of the drug companies who are getting controlled by the Sabatine Frankist bankers who control the media. Monsanto cuts 12% of its workforce to save money at mid-profit drop. I hope they fire everybody. I hate Monsanto with that stupid Roundup mess, that poison they have everybody. A shocking study, chemotherapy can backfire, making cancer worse by triggering tumor growth. Long considered the most effective cancer-fighting treatment by mainstream medicine, chemotherapy may actually make cancer worse. I mean, duh. Yeah. According to a shocking new study, I've been telling people that for 20 years, 30 years, the extremely aggressive therapy, which kills both cancerous and healthy cells, indiscriminately can cause healthy cells to secrete a protein that sustains tumor growth and makes further resistance possible. WHT16B, when secreted, would interact with nearby tumor cells and cause them to grow, invade, and importantly, resist subsequent therapy, says Nelson. You know, the thing about this whole thing, we're going to look back in 100 years from now if we're still here. And, you know, as far as the country in a whole, which, you know, probably isn't going to be here, to be honest with you guys. And we're going to say we cannot believe that we have this butchery of chemotherapy and radiation and surgery for, you know, almost 100 years at the Rockefeller Medical Complex.
Right.
And it's just awful what they've done. It's just awful what they've done and how everything has been turned to profits for them. Now, let me go through some of these news things real quick. This is an article that I tried to get through 3 months ago with you guys, and I didn't have time. And it's by a lady by the name of Freeman. And she goes that everything is basically fake in this world. And she says, here are the number one things. And I put in my own commentary on most of these. She says, everything's fake news. Okay, so with the mainstream media, also known as the lamestream media, I call it the CNN, I call it the comedy news network, the constant negative news network, the clown news network, I mean, whatever you want to call it. Everything. The news is dominated by a handful of for-profit corporations, which are all owned by the major banks, which control all the major media and control all the information that we get as far as drugs. Number two is fake journalism. And, you know, back in the 70s, I don't know if you remember this or not, Doug. Well, you remember this one because you're not that young. Because I know you're about 6 or 7 years younger than me. But you remember what happened with Watergate with Nixon? How these guys got a hold of that and they wouldn't quit, they wouldn't stop, they just kept. I mean, that's back when we had a little bit of truth in the media.
Oh yeah, I watched all the hearings. Yeah, I watched all the hearings.
Me too. And I was graduating from high school thinking, God, when are these hearings going to end? And the craziest thing is this: it's just fake journalism. Now we don't get any of that anymore. We don't get the true people out there. Well, we have a few. We have us, you know, you, me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got Dave Hodges are telling the truth. And I'm talking about mainstream stuff now. It's just not real. I mean, there are very Ben Swans that are out there, and you know, Ben Swan and both Cheryl Atkins were both fired because they were telling the truth. And so we've seen that they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to do it because they want to control the narrative. Number three is fake entertainment and fake sports. I got a news flash for you guys. I mean, if you think that professional football is real, it's about as real as professional wrestling. I mean, it's just not real. And college football is getting just as bad with the shaving of points and the betting of the billions of dollars on some of these major games out of Vegas. I mean, this whole thing is just obfuscation. This is the bread and circuses they're giving the masses to try to entertain us and to keep us from being involved and engaged with what's going on politically. And you know, it's just what's happening. I mean, if we think that they're telling us the truth about anything as far as entertainment with the sports, et cetera, it's simply not real. It's not. Fake corporate PR and advertising. Okay? They're using weaponized psychology basically on you right now. They're giving you let me read you. This is great. Do you ever wonder why Big Pharma always shows beautiful models, happy retired people, bouncing dogs, or smiling babies to peddle its poisonous, side effect-laden drugs? Corporations are soulless entities and legal persons, the epitome of fakery in many ways, since they are fake persons with the rights of people and the responsibilities of none. I couldn't have written that better myself, and that's exactly right. I mean, everything's just fake PR advertising, and it's just Joseph Goebbels run amok on steroids. Next is fake medicine. Big Pharma is the force behind Western medicine, and Rockefeller is the force behind both of them. With the smorgasbord of synthetic drugs, vaccines, surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, Western medicine, or allopathic medicine, has earned the dubious honor of killing hundreds of thousands of people every year. It says that allopathy kills 225,000 per year in the U.S., while a 2003 study by Gary Knoll and others found that allopathy kills 783,000 per people per year in the United States. 12,000 deaths from unnecessary surgery, 7,000 deaths from infections and medical errors, 80,000 from infections acquired in hospitals, 106,000 from FDA-approved, correctly prescribed medicines, 37,000 deaths unnecessary procedures, 98,000 deaths from medical error, 150,000 deaths from bed sore, 88,000 deaths from infection, 108,000 deaths from malnutrition, and I talk about this in my book, too, Breakthrough Health, 200,000 deaths related to outpatients, and 106,000 deaths from adverse drug reactions. I mean, this is what we have. We have fake medicine in the United States. Oh, you got a problem with blood sugar? Take this drug. It'll take care of it. It's going to give you pancreatic cancer. It's going to destroy your kidneys, but we may be able to help your blood sugar, but you're going to feel absolutely awful while you're taking it, and then you're going to die, but we're going to make money. That's the truth, Doug. Joe, that's what they do. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Fake scientific research. Remember the University of Florida, we talked about this last month, about one of their top medical researchers there was basically just putting out straight fake research. This is in Gainesville. Fake acquired immunity. Another piece of fakery is the idea that vaccine-induced immunity or acquired immunity is as good as identical to natural immunity, which it is not. If you get the measles or you get the chickenpox or you get the mumps, you never get them again. These immunizations that they're giving you get rid of this for a little while, but it can come back later on in life causing much more severe effects. Fake food. I love this one. Preservatives and plastics. Synthetic taste. I did a whole article on this about how aborted fetal tissue is used as a flavor enhancer in Pepsi. And they admitted it, Doug. They admitted it. I mean, they're telling us they're using aborted fetal tissue for a flavor enhancer in Pepsi.
Okay, you really need to explain that because people are not buying that. And you know what, Ted? I know it's true. You know it's true. It's out there. Drive it home.
What happens is this. We have certain taste receptors which respond to certain types of chemicals, compounds, and certain types of cellular structure. And they've actually, and Pepsi had to come out, and you can look it up, Google it. Pepsi's using aborted fetal tissue as a flavor enhancer, and they're doing it. Where do you think all of these aborted babies are going and all these fetal parts are going through Planned Parenthood? They're going into industry. They're going into research. And they did this. Go to my website, and you can pull it up. I wrote a whole article on this a couple of years ago about Pepsi and aborted fetal cells and what they're doing as a flavor enhancer. And see, this is not being made up. I'm not making any of this stuff up because from a liability standpoint, I wouldn't say stuff like this. They had to admit to doing it. So just Google it. Pepsi uses aborted fetal cells as a flavor enhancer, and you're going to get a plethora of articles, and probably mine too. Fake water. We've got all this water that is flowing from these municipalities that is loaded with fluorine, that's loaded with chlorine, that's loaded with chemicals. It is loaded with pharmaceutical drugs. It is loaded with antibiotics. It is loaded with everything. It's nuts how poisonous the water is, and that's why we recommend to use a distillation system. I know I sent a distiller to you guys, Doug. Gosh, probably beginning of the year.
Yep.
And once you start using it, you never go back. It tastes so good. People come to our house and they go, wow, your water tastes sweet. It tastes really good. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a distillation system. It's amazing how good it is. And I've been using it for about 35 years now. Fake choice on elections. Look what they did to Ron Paul at the last election when he was in the debates. And they would literally give him 90 seconds an hour, or whatever it was, and they completely just ignored him. And every time he tried to say something, people just didn't, they basically scoffed at him. Because fake choice on elections, that's what we're getting. We're not getting the truth. We mentioned it earlier. They're going to tell us who's going to win, basically by the polls they're going to give us, and then whoever they want to win is going to win. It's what happens. Fake money. We have a debt-based currency system, Babylonian currency system, since 1913. We've hit this thing to nauseum, and that's got to go away. Fake economy. The numbers are total lies. I mean, don't you love the way U.S. presidents get up to their State of the Union addresses and claim with a straight face that the State of the Union and the economy are strong?
Yeah.
Anyone who looks at the rapid and almost hyperbolic rise of U.S. debt and borrowing in the past 10 years knows that U.S. is in deep, deep trouble. It owes $18 trillion on the books, and of course with the Social Security trust funds, over $100 trillion. I mean, it's not getting any better; it's getting worse. Fake free markets. Let me tell you about the markets in the stock market. It's all pixie dust. None of it's real. It's pixie dust. The gold and silver, their markets are completely fixed and rigged right now. Look at the LIBOR rigging of the interest rates. I mean, look at the naked shorts that are being done on a regular basis on gold and silver. Gold should be $5,000 an ounce. Silver should be $200 to $300 an ounce right now. Right now.
Yeah,
but it's not because of the amount of money we've increased the circulation.
Yep.
It's just fake. Fake trade agreement, fake trade agreements. We've talked about this, NAFTA and all the stuff they're doing. Fake accounting. Underpinning the fake economy is fake accounting. I'm still reading on the article. Remember on September the 10th, 2001, when the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, the same guy who gave us the killer sweetener aspartame, announced that $2.3 trillion was missing and unaccounted for. That's right. He couldn't find $2.3 trillion, but it got swept under the carpet because of 9/11. And some of the top people now are doing the research in the economy are saying that there's $35 trillion that's missing now. How about the fake welfare? That's the next thing. The elite owners of the multinational corporations, many of whom are millionaires, not billionaires, like to be complaining about the U.S. welfare system and programs like SNAP or food stamps, as it's colloquially called. Meanwhile, the corporate welfare rakes in billions of dollars in government contracts, subsidies, and tax cuts due to the corrupt and undue influence they wield, chiefly through lobbying. The point of welfare is to help the poorest and the neediest, not the wealthiest. the preponderance of corporate welfare and the power of corporatocracy is another sign that the U.S. is a fascist society. I agree with that. How about fake government? We no longer have a republic. We no longer have a constitution that they're following. We're run by oligarchies. I mean, we're run by a group of super powerful men and corporations that have decided that, what we're going to do, who's going to win the election, who's going to run for the elections, and, and basically what the policies of the United States are going to be. I mean, look at what's going on right now with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Doug and Joe. I mean, how many of us got to vote on that? How many of we, the people, got to vote on that?
Well, they asked me. I'm surprised they didn't ask you. Yeah, right.
How many lawmakers got to read it?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, yeah. I mean, but again, the republic. We're supposed to be a republic, but like I said, we're just an oligarchy. And Thomas Jefferson, he was a Democrat way back when, and and he or a liberal, and basically, we've lost all of that. We don't have that ability anymore. Now we have the fact that we have the fake elections. We have the diabolical election machines that basically, who knows whether they can make anybody win who they want to win. We've got fake national security. I mean, national security is a favorite just a factory term invoked by the elite to hide their documents and actions under the cloak of secrecy while invading other foreign and sovereign nations abroad and taking away people's rights domestically. However, national security has nothing to do with making you more secure. It's about making the elite more secure by entrenching military secrecy and contracts, and you more insecure by taking away your rights and your liberties. I mean, it's just so true. How about fake defense? Remember when Clinton gave away our guided missile technology and the silent shaft technology for our submarines to China? Remember how they did all that back in the 90s?
Oh yes, I do. Yep.
I mean, I was pitching a fit back then, but nobody cared. Nobody cared. Fake education. We don't have an education system in this country. We're dumbing down the country. We've taken over on the University of Leipzig's Pavlovian skull and bones, and we're basically using opera conditioning on the children. We're not teaching them to think. We're programming them as to what they're supposed to believe. And that wasn't effective enough, so we had to start dumbing them down with immunizations. Interesting, this just happened this week. This is actually a high point of the week since all this stuff's been going on. This was Wednesday or Tuesday. I can't remember now. Everything's a blur this week. But we called up Polk State College here where we live, which is a state college, a 4-year school. And my daughter, my 12-year-old, passed her college entrance exams. I think I may have mentioned this to you guys before. Yeah. My 14-year-old, she also passed one of them. And Harrison, my 16-year-old, he's in his second year of college with 42 collegiate credits with a 4.0. And my 12-year-old passed her college entrance exams, and then we gave her the state placement test, right? And she scored a 12.9 grade for every single course at the age of 12. In other words, she's in college right now at the age of 12. So I called up the local college, and I said, I don't know what to do. And they said, what do you mean? So I told them what my dilemma was. How do you engage a 12-year-old who's at the collegiate level? And they said, "This is. I'm telling you, this is the honest truth."
I love it.
And I said, so we had to have a meeting with them. And so we brought all our test scores in and all this other kind of stuff. And she sat there and sang in perfect German, "Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht." You can watch her on YouTube do that. Her name's Savannah Brower. She's got like 10,000 views on that. Savannah Brower, B-R-O-E-R, singing Silent Night, Holy Night. And if you're going to say something nice about her, make a comment. If you don't want to say something nice, please don't watch the video. And sorry, Doug.
No,
I mean,
go for
if you don't
it.
want to give her a thumbs up, she's doing the best she can. She was 9 years old when she did this song in front of like 3,000 people. And so then they asked her about foreign languages, and she said that she'd been taking German here at the house, and then she jumps up and starts singing that Silent Night, Holy Night right there in the lobby of the college. So they're all flipping out. They've approved her to start college classes in January at the age of 13. She'll be 13 in another month.
Oh,
Is that
God
crazy or
bless.
what?
Congratulations.
I mean, I'm talking full scholarship. Full scholarship.
That's marvelous. And how did that come to be? I mean, it's a combination of intense parenting, I believe. Genetics is part of it, but not all of it. Certainly the health aspect of it. But most importantly, I believe it's the guidance, isn't it? I mean, Ted.
Well, it's so funny. The lady wrote us a letter, and I mean, God, please forgive me, guys. I don't like when people brag about their kids, so I'm going to make this real short. She said that she's seen literally hundreds of kids come through the program. Probably none this young, she said. But she said when she met our kids there, because the 16-year-old was there with us too. And she said, I don't usually say this to parents, but you guys are really good parents. You have to really spend a lot of time with these kids. See, every morning we pray with the kids. We have a family meeting every day, and we teach them how to pray and how to pray right. We teach them the values that they're no longer being taught. And so, she's going to take college success. I'll probably have either me or Sharon will sit in the class with her twice a week, and then she'll be taking keyboarding online because I don't want her there that much yet. She's still too young, and she's not going to go unsupervised because she's so young. But the point is, she's going to college. She could have started at 12 because she passed her exams like 8 months ago. But the reality is I wanted to give her a little bit more time to grow up a little bit more because, she's like 5'3" now. But she works out with us, 3 days a week, and she's in great shape. She runs and exercises and does gymnastics all the time. And see, what we're trying to do is build champion children. And that's why when I talk about what I talk about the first hour of the show, it's not because I haven't tried to do that on my own. And I've got a 14-year-old. We couldn't meet her needs anymore, so we sent her out to that Montana ranch that I was telling you guys about, and I love her with all my heart. I write her letters all the time. She's doing great. Because if you as a parent can't meet the needs of your child, if you don't feel as though you're capable of it, get some help. Do what I did. Don't allow it just to continue and get worse. It's just no good. Let me get back to this because we're running out of time. Fake law. We no longer have, there's a stop sign down the road from me. I run it all the time. So there you go. I admit it. I run the stop sign. It wasn't there when I moved here. It wasn't here for the first 15 years that I lived here. They suddenly put the stop sign up 1 week. I didn't vote for the stop sign. There weren't any accidents there. They decided to do it. I mean, nobody voted for it. I don't want it there. And so we have statutes and regulations that we're being bound by, and we don't even know what they are. Fake laws, statutes, regulations, rules, policy, bylaws, codes. It goes on and on and on. We have to stand up against this stuff. I mean, remember what happened to us? England was sending all of their people that were supposedly bad to the United States, as far as in indentured servitude. I mean, they would pass laws that no one even knew the law was there. They would arrest them and say, "You're going to go to jail here for life, or you're going to the United States." So they sent them to the United States. They're trying to get rid of the folks that weren't making enough money or weren't being productive citizens. Finally, in 1776, we had enough of that. We quit doing that. We told them we couldn't send them over because we rebelled against England. So they started sending them to Australia, to the slave colony down there, which is basically what it was, and it was a penal colony. We have fake rights. Now, let me share this with you. We're born free. We were all born with real, natural, unalienable, God-given, inherent human rights, whatever you want to word or however you want to describe it. But the problem is now they take those rights away and they give us fake rights instead. And that's not right. We have these inherent rights that we have from God Almighty, but now they say, well, you don't have these rights anymore because we said you can't have them. That's nonsense. That's tyranny. Fake consent. I love this. Fake consent is that there's many of the contracts that we sign, even with Google and Amazon and everything else. They say you have to click yes that you agree to all of this. You get a 40-page contract that nobody reads. Those are called adhesion contracts. Meaning the contract where one side is heavily favored by the terms and where the other party is severely restricted. I mean, they do the same thing with bank accounts, with voter registration, with driver's licenses. It's ridiculous. Fake morality, and we talked about this earlier. The Schofield Bible folks and what they believe and how they tried to force it all on us. People really don't understand what a true understanding of who God is and who Jesus Christ is and who we are. And listen to Paul McGuire on this stuff. I love Paul McGuire. That guy is so amazing. He really is. Look at the fake clouds that we're having now from the geoengineering and the Morgellons, which we're going to go into detail. Look at all the bees that are being killed by the aluminum and bees that are being killed by Monsanto with their GMO corn that's actually listed as a pesticide. And when the bees eat it or try to pollinate it, they die. Look at the fake war on terror.
Yep.
The fake war on terror is at the top of the list. I mean, the Australian comedian Steve Hughes says, how can you have a war on something which is the consequence of war? That's the truth. Terror is a consequence of war. I mean, we've provoked all of these people over there, all over the planet now, and now we're turning them loose in the Europe. It's crazy. Look at the fake lone nut killers that we have all over the world, like Lee Harvey Oswald, Sirhan, James Earl Ray, all of these people that were just fake. A fake boogeyman on the war of terror. I mean, look what Prescott Bush did, who traded with the Nazis, and George Bush Sr., former head of the CIA, and many people believe was involved in JFK's death. I mean, look at these guys, the members of the Carlyle Group. George Bush Sr., basically many people feel was mentally impaired U.S. president who presided over 9/11 or the war on terror. This goes on. Fake false flag events. Look at the Bay of Tonka. Look at all of the stuff that's happened. Look at all this. Look at 9/11. Look at the Norway shooting of 2011. Look at Sandy Hook in 2012, the Boston Marathon, the LAX shooting of 2013. This list just goes on and on and on. the French Charlie Hebdo shooting of 2015, the Charleston shooting of 2015. And what I love the most, Doug, are the fake crisis actors when they use the same people. It's Sandy Hook, the Boston Marathon, and the Charleston shooting. They change their hairstyle, and they have them give the same testimonials. Have you ever noticed all that? I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about it on your show.
Sure. I mean, it's obvious, but you know, how much of this, Ted, really is provable? They make it so, and this is one thing that I really, when we talk about this, I don't want to take much time away from you, but it's interesting when we talk about this. They make it so it's just beyond the reach of the evidentiary value. Okay, so in other words, I mean, you can see it, you can point to it, but can you prove it? Nah. And it's like
chemtrails. You can't prove chemtrails.
Yeah, thank you.
You could do a water sample from the rain, like I've done. It's posted on my website with all the aluminum and barium in my rainwater, 2 separate samples. But you can't prove where it came from.
That's right.
You can't prove it came out of the back of the jets.
Exactly.
So there's no plausible deniability. There's no litigation. You can't file a lawsuit for it. You can't prove it.
And even worse. And I was like this. You can take your neighbor or your uninformed relative by the elbow and show them the sky and say, look at that, and they'll look at it and say, yeah, it's the contrails from airplanes, and that's where and there's no. I mean,
yeah, there's no military geoengineering of the sky. You're
of course
crazy.
not. Yeah. So.
That's right.
Okay.
And you can show them the water samples. They'll say, "Well, that's not from those planes. There's some kind of power plant here locally that's doing that." And I'm like,
or it's a natural artifact of the environment. Yes.
Aluminum and barium.
Yeah.
But I found there was both in my water such high concentrations that they said it was illegal. And you go to my website, you can click on the reports, and I don't black out the names of the reports or who did the reports or who the people were. I show you the actual copies of the reports so you can see them, the same ones they sent to me.
Yep.
We've got the fake pandemics. We already talked about those. The fake space program, which is, by the way, far, 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 far advanced from what they're telling us. Then we've got the by the way, I like the fake spacewalks, in which they actually have people in water tanks and they superimpose the stars in the background, and you see bubbles coming up from the tank they're in.
Well, people are going to call you nuts, Ted. I mean, come on.
That's all right, but I've watched them I just laugh. I just think, well, whatever, man. And of course, those could be fake too. Somebody could be posting them on the internet saying those are fake.
Well,
and then I love this one, the fake history. The fake history. Okay, all the stuff about what happened with the Russian Revolution, what happened with Stalin, what happened with all of these people, what happened with Marx, all of this stuff that we were so instrumental in the West. As far as Lenin, all of these people, and basically forcing this, and now we've hidden it all, so we have fake history.
Yep.
And so, and finally, this article goes on. The final thing we have is the fake universe. It seems that the very universe we live in is a hologram, and so basically, it's so funny to me when I was reading that whole article, and I've been trying to go over some of those points. Now, I don't agree with everything in those. You guys know that, but the point is, it's just ironic to me that so much of what this lady who wrote this article said is so true. How we've been told this whole group of lies. I mean, there's something going on with the moon we don't understand.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Yep.
There's something going on with Antarctica that we don't understand. I interviewed a man on the Power Hour, Richard Allen Miller, and he's a former high up naval guy, and he's amazing. He's kind of a hard interview because it's kind of like trying to herd a bunch of cats. He's hard to keep on track. A very brilliant guy, off the chain brilliant, and he told me he was actually in the Antarctica base that the Nazis had. Told me that on the air.
Wow.
Told me that it's got a 5,000-foot ceiling in it. It's basically a huge cavern, subterranean cavern. He saw Viking ships and remnants of ships and the Nazi stuff in there. And he said it has this bacteria, this algae that actually glows. So it's luminous, so it has its own light. He said it was such a high cavern. It was so huge that it had its own weather and rain in it. It was so big. And so, I mean, so there's something going on in
Ted,
Antarctica that nobody wants to talk about.
Did he happen to mention a gold swastika? A big, big gold swastika?
He did not.
Okay.
He did not, but
Interesting.
are you being facetious? Or
No,
direct?
No, I'm being
no.
serious. I'm being dead serious.
Now, there's some research, Ted, about this, but the 5,000-foot ceiling, that's almost a mile in
That's
height.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could fly an airplane in it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and we know that what happened with Admiral Byrd, but of course they're denying all of that with more of their fake history, and it goes on and on and on with Operation High Jump. I mean, so the whole thing about it is we're in a situation on this planet that we don't really know what to believe or who to believe anymore. And so I always tell people this: I read pretty much everything. Now, if it gets to this weird satanic stuff, I won't read any of that stuff because I don't want that stuff going into my mind, and I don't like all the symbology associated with it. But the truth is, if you'd have told me what I know to be fact, if you'd exposed me to most of your people who you have on your show 20 years ago, and I had not had the experience and had not read all of this stuff and not had studied and read hundreds of books, I'd have thought they were totally nuts. I would have thought they're nuts because nobody wants to believe any of this stuff is real. I mean, unified field theory now suggests that our reality is literally a sea of energy, an energetic illusion that our consciousness perceives and interacts with. It says that the world you see around you is really a soup of intelligent energy that fool your senses into believing it is tangible, visible, and audible reality that you experience. I mean, this is what unified field theory says. I mean, so the craziest thing is that we're beginning to realize that this whole universe that God made is wondrous indeed, and how we're made in it, how our souls are so real, and how we have the ability to discern all of this stuff and to understand who we really are. And if we as human beings could understand the length, the depth, the breadth from which we've fallen from the Garden of Eden, and what this planet really was when God made it paradise, and the relationship that he wants with us as human beings, as his children, it would blow our minds. That we've been so lied to, we've been so adulterated, we've been so obfuscated that we have forgotten who we are, and we're on this low energy bandwidth of all of this nonsense that we do, and we don't realize that Jesus said the greatest about these is love, to love your neighbor as you love yourself, and that love's going to bring us to where we need to be. But we don't want the media right now, and the globalists and the Sabbateans that are running the world, they don't want us to love one another. They don't want us to walk in love and in peace and in forgiveness. They want to have constant conflict, constant war on terror, constant everything to maintain that really negative state of the whole planet as far as the group consciousness. And that's what's going on. And so we need to realize that Jesus Christ gave us the answer when God sent his Son who died on Calvary for us. He sent us grace because he wanted to redeem us back to himself. And we need to realize that's the most important thing that any of us are ever going to do. Because the truth is, I'm 60 years old. I'm not some spring chicken anymore. And I tell you what, I feel great. I got tremendous energy all the time. But the point is, I'm not at the peak of where I was physically 40 years ago. And I certainly won't be there in 30 years from now. But the truth is this. All of us are going to be seeing Jesus someday. We're going to be going to heaven or hell. We get to choose where we want to go, which is kind of cool about that. He actually gives us a choice. And the sad part about it is a lot of people don't understand who we are as the creation of God, and they want to completely adulterate our relationship with him. And we can't allow that. We've got to stand firm in the beliefs of Christianity. We've got to realize what the Bible says is true. We've got to get away from all these commentaries that try to misdirect us, and we need to realize that this Word of God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and it's not going to change. Jesus said not one jot will be taken away until all of these things are accomplished, and that's what we have to understand. You can go ahead and go against the Word of God. You can stand against it, but you'll only break yourself against the natural principles in his Word, and you'll never be able to stand against it long term because he's always going to be proven out to be true, guys. And that's what we have to understand as Christians. We have to go ahead and realize that it's all about our relationship with Jesus, our relationship with God, our relationship with our families. It's not about how much money we make or what kind of house we live in. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's about the relationship. Because I guarantee you, nobody listening tonight is going to say on their deathbed, I wish I'd have spent more time at the office. I wish I'd have spent more time playing golf. They're going to say, I wish I'd have spent more time with my family, with my Creator, in prayer, and reading the Bible. And that's how they're going to think about it as they check out of this planet.
Amen. And wish we had more time tonight, Ted, but you filled up the whole show with just fantastic, up-to-date information. And we thank you so much for your time tonight,
And
Ted.
if people like what they hear, and I know they do, just judging by the emails that we've been getting, Ted has his own show on right here on Global Star Radio Network, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Monday through Friday.
That's right. It's a definite, you can't miss it.
Sunday, 7 to 8.
Amen.
Right
and then,
before Dave Hodges.
Ted, you're going to be on Dave Hodges this weekend, right?
Yes, I'll be on the first hour. I'll be doing my show, and then be going right straight to Dave Hodges' show on Sunday night.
Fantastic.
So it'll make it easy for Todd from Global Star Satellite, because I'll still be hooked up on the Skype.
That's wonderful.
Let's go from one show to the next.
So,
right.
folks, listeners, tune in.
Hey, guys, thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your wonderful audience, and I thank them all for the support they've given us over the years. And I just appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Amen. Have a good night. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Resources.com.